Hello, this is Storybooks channel. New videos are posted every day. Subscribe and click the bell.
Olivia walked slowly from the bus stop to the office. It was early morning October, and there was a gray pre-dawn gloom, a piercing wind and rain dripping down. The office building where she had recently taken a job as a cleaner was in an industrial area. A bit far from the bus stop, but what can you do? The pay was good, the work was scarce, and Olivia needed the money. Now it's an hour and a half to work before the employees come, and rather to another office, located in the center of the city. There's a lot less work in those buildings than in the stores. Olivia once worked as a cleaner in a large shopping center. No sooner does she clean the floor than someone already walked on it with dirty shoes and all over again, and some of them even threw garbage in front of her defiantly. They say that she is a cleaner, so fulfill your duties. It was humiliating, but what choice did she have? It is necessary to live somehow, to raise a daughter, and count on no one, along with Ashley at each other, in the whole world. Sometimes it became so dreary, there was no reliable male shoulder. She had to do everything by herself. Olivia had never known any parental affection at all. She saw that mom and dad support, even many adults. Her neighbor, for example, can quietly leave her children at her grandparents' and rest. Her parents give her gifts and money, and just a kind word to support her in a difficult moment. Everything is easier when you know that you are not alone. And if something happens to her, what will happen to Ashley? After all, they have no relatives ready to take the girl in. Will she be sent to an orphanage? Olivia grew up in an orphanage and did not want such a fate for her daughter. Usually parents regret that their children grow up quickly. Olivia, on the other hand, rejoiced at every new birthday for her daughter, another year older. Ashley recently turned 10 years old. She is already in the 4th grade. By the way, an excellent girl, only 8 years old, and an adult. Consider that independent. If God forbid, what and will cope on her own? But of course, Olivia wanted to be near her daughter as long as possible and give her everything she never had: warmth, care, love, support. Ashley is such a good girl. Olivia dreamed of higher education for her. She herself felt she could have studied and worked in a more qualified position than a cleaner, but that's the way life was. What can you do? Not everyone is lucky. Olivia, a graduate of the orphanage, worked as a cleaner at several sites, 2 office buildings and a fitness center. It was possible to combine, however. Dancing with a mop had to be 10 hours a day. So in the evening the woman was very tired. Her lower back ached and her legs hummed, but she had enough to live on, and even for small pleasures, in the form of goodies and extra outfits for Ashley. Olivia liked to dress up her little princess, but she didn't think about herself. Why? She didn't need to attract men. She had enough of an affair with Ashley's father to realize that personal happiness was not for her. Of course, sometimes she dreamed of a prince who would protect her and her daughter from all the hardships of life. But the woman realized that there are no such men. It's just an invented ideal image. Once Olivia tried to work as a salesman. The work seems to be less hard, and the salary is more, but quickly realized that it is not her. A merchant should be quick, perky, be able to weigh, persuade to buy not liquid goods, but Olivia could not, and that's all. She was always honest, direct, and sincere. The owner once heard that the new seller, advising an old lady to buy tomatoes cheaper because expensive, beautiful to taste, like grass, and the same day calculated her. Why does he need such employees? And Olivia continued her usual business, washing offices, stores, entrances. The locations changed, but the function remained the same. How long is the drive? The office staff got here by car. Everyone had their own car, even the very young girls and boys. Olivia saw them when she finished her work and walked in the opposite direction to the bus stop. The employees of the company were just arriving at the office, and among all the employees, one young woman in her mid-30s, her age, stood out. Red, shiny in the sun, foreign car, dark glasses, loose hair, she looked so stylish, so refined. Olivia liked to fantasize about what this woman's life was like. Imagine yourself in her shoes. It's her, Olivia, sitting behind the wheel of a luxury car. The air conditioner is running. Her favorite tune is blasting from the stereo. She has a wealthy, handsome husband, caring parents who gave her a start in life. She is valued at work for her ability to make reports and plan competently. Ah, the dream life. And the building is still a long way off. Every morning Olivia had to get up at 5:30 to take the bus across town for an hour and then another half hour to get from the office stop. Olivia lived with her daughter on the outskirts of the city in a 5-story house. After graduating from the orphanage, she had been given a 1-room tiny apartment as an orphan, a small bedroom and living room, a 6-meter kitchen, a long-needed bathroom with humming pipes, creaky wooden floors, but Olivia was happy. After so many years of living in a common room, finally her own corner, separate. Olivia turned it into a cozy nest, a quiet harbor in which it was so pleasant to shelter from the hardships of life. Here she felt good and relaxed. She had her own home. Being a pupil of an orphanage, Olivia entered college. She chose the specialty of cook and pastry chef. She always liked to study. Teachers noted that she had an excellent memory and aptitude for math, but of course, higher education was out of the question. It was urgent to get a working specialty. After graduation from the orphanage, there was only a year to study in college, and then, even if not a dream job, but a job that will definitely not leave hungry. Studying Olivia was given easily. The red diploma already loomed literally in front of the nose. There was only a year. The girl lived then on a scholarship, plus a part-time janitor, but plans for a profession was not destined to come true, because in the life of Olivia he appeared, the fun-loving and seemingly kind and reliable Adam. He studied at the same college, only a year older, and his specialty was different, a catering technologist, a more promising and difficult profession than Olivia, of which Adam periodically reminded. After college, the guy was going to serve in the army and then to graduate. I will work for my uncle at the dairy. He is the head of the sales department. He will find me a good position. Adam shared his plans, and Olivia listened and thought that this is happiness. Adam is a real man. He thinks about the future. He has so many prospects, and he is so smart, and how logically he thinks. You can't go to waste with someone like that. Olivia and Adam often met in the corridors of the college, but at first they did not pay much attention to each other. Olivia had liked him for a long time, smiling, lively, funny, witty, companionable, always surrounded by friends, and one day she ran into him in the same company. Her classmate was celebrating her birthday at the campground, and Adam was among the invitees. Olivia had already graduated from the orphanage and was settling into her new apartment. She felt happy and very grown up, independent. This feeling surrounded her head and created the illusion that the whole world lay at her feet. Adam, as always, was the center of attention. Many girls tried to flirt with him, but he only guffawed. Olivia laughed heartily at his witticisms and even had a few words with the local star. He honored her with his attention, wow, and even agreed with her opinion, supported her in the dialogue, and then Then the unbelievable happened. It was already evening. Young people were having fun in the house rented for a day. Suddenly, Olivia became stuffy. She really wanted to go out into the air to enjoy the evening coolness and silence of the pine forest. She wasn't going to go far from the base, of course, just in case. She didn't want to become the heroine of some horror movie. Olivia decided to go down to the lake and sit on the shore for a while, listening to the crickets chirping and admiring the stars, large, bright, and somehow very close, the kind you don't see in the city. On a rickety ladder, Olivia went down to the water. There was a luxurious wooden bench, still kept the warmth of the sun, which warmed her all day. It was so cozy to sit on it and look at the ripples on the surface of the lake and mesmerizing, sparkling moon path. And then he came, Adam. He silently settled down beside her. Olivia looked at him in surprise. He smiled a charming smile and broke the silence. "Would you like some company?" He's still asking. Of course, Olivia was all for it. Adam himself condescended to her, a simple girl. He has so many college hotties around him, and he's sitting here with her. "Are you enjoying the party?" asked the guy. "It's fun," Olivia admitted. "But I like it better here. I've never seen such big stars. Haven't you ever been out of town?" "Of course I have," answered Olivia. The orphanages sent their children to camp every summer, but there was an early departure, so the girl was really admiring the starry sky for the first time, not clouded by the light of city lights. "It's beautiful." Adam agreed, staring up at the sky. "But you know what's even more beautiful here?" Olivia shook her head negatively. "You," the guy simply replied, looking his companion straight in the eyes. It was not the first compliment Olivia had heard in her life. Ever since she was a little girl, her teachers had told her that she was very pretty, but to get a compliment from a guy, and a popular one at that, that was something else. Olivia was even dizzy with surprise. Did Adam really like her? "I've been watching you for a long time," the guy continued. "You are very beautiful and yet modest, not like the others. I finally decided to tell you about it." Olivia could not believe her ears. So Adam had liked her all this time, but he'd been too shy to tell her. Well, he was just skillful at hiding his feelings. The girl could not even imagine such a thing. "I'm sick of these painted dolls, like a copycat." Adam continued. "And you're real. You're not like the others. That's why I'm attracted to you." I don't even know what to say." Olivia confessed honestly, but her eyes shone with genuine joy, and Adam understood everything without further ado. He carefully and very gently put his arm around her shoulders. He looked her in the eyes, made sure that she didn't mind, and kissed Olivia. The girl had recently turned 18, but this was her first kiss. Unlike the girls from the orphanage and her classmates, she didn't go out with boys and didn't hurry to grow up. But now Olivia felt really happy, loved, desired, unique. Adam was near her. Warmth and sympathy emanated from him. Tears suddenly came to her eyes. It was nice to realize that you were the source of such strong feelings. After all, Olivia had never been so interested in anyone before, and now he was. "Let's go out," Adam simply suggested. Of course, Olivia immediately said yes. Nightingales sang in her soul. It seemed that life would now change 180 degrees, and everything would finally be fine. No more lonely evenings and longing for a soulmate. Later, the girl learned from mutual acquaintances what really attracted Adam, her free apartment, in which you could organize parties and actually live, without parental notations and control, without pressure and moralizing. The guy knew that Olivia was from an orphanage, and that graduates are given a separate living space. That's why he appeared in her life. just at that moment. He wanted freedom from his parents, who always demanded something from him. The guy got everything as he planned. Adam moved into Olivia's apartment, and now his friends were often here. Neighbors looked askew. No one liked the noisy parties that the guy liked to arrange, but Olivia did not pay attention to the comments. Happiness overshadowed her eyes. Adam was caring and attentive at first, gave flowers, showered with compliments, praised Olivia's cooking. After a noisy feast, he always cleaned the apartment, emptied cans from behind the radiator, washed the floors, shook out cigarette butts in the trash. The guy showed Olivia his favorite movies. The girl did not like them at all, but to make her lover happy, she assured him that she was delighted with such movies. They walked a lot, laughed. Sometimes Adam was away on family business, then in a neighboring town with his parents went to some relatives, then with his mother flew to the sea. At these moments, Olivia was left alone and again felt unhappy and lonely. Adam did not introduce her to her parents yet. He said it was too early. My mother does not want me to marry before the age of 25. She said children, family problems will come. They will pile up. There will be no time and energy for higher education. She wants to see me as a big man. Olivia understood everything and silently accepted the rules of the game. She was fine. 6 months passed when Olivia realized something was wrong with her. Nausea in the mornings, dizziness, and latency. Everything pointed to the fact that she was pregnant. Although Adam had been using protection, something must have gone wrong at some point. A test from the drugstore confirmed those suspicions. Olivia looked at the 2 stripes and experienced a mixture of feelings. The first and the main feeling was joy. She would have a baby, a native being, her son or daughter. It was happiness. Somewhere in her chest, a warmth was already developing that made her feel so light and pleasant. But these were feelings, and her mind told her that not everything was so rosy. Adam finishes college and goes to the army in spring. She still has a whole year to study, and it's a very responsible time. She has to prepare for graduation, to do final work, to practice a lot. And how to manage it all, first with a big belly and then with a baby in her arms. Yes, and Adam hoped that he would be happy with the news of imminent fatherhood. Of course, there was, but something told Olivia it is unlikely that he is now ready for it. The guy had shared his plans many times, including the army, college, and career. He certainly did not dream about children. The girl for a long time did not dare to tell her. It was good that the guy made the decision to leave on his own, not having to kick that traitor out. True then, left alone in his apartment, the girl still gave vent to tears. Of course, Olivia realized that it would be difficult, very difficult, but for the sake of the child she will cope. Adam then more than once called Olivia and approached her in college, persuaded her to abort, then promised a reward, then threatened, then painted pictures of the hopeless future of a single mother. The girl tried to avoid her former lover by all means. It is good that he has already graduated from college, and then in the army for a year goes, without him easier. Summer vacation came. When Olivia passed the session, the belly was not yet visible. No one and did not guess about her pregnancy. But in the summer everything became obvious. The term was already decent. Olivia had to update the closet. At the end of the summer, at the ultrasound at the women's clinics that the sex of the child, a girl, Olivia looked at the monitor and cried with emotion. She clearly saw the profile of her daughter, snub nose, convex forehead. It's just a miracle. The fetus is healthy and will be delivered around October 15. Indifferently informed the woman doctor. October 15, how many more things do we have to do before then? Olivia needed money, so she officially got a job. Now the girl not only worked as a janitor, but also washed the entrances. The salary increased several times, but there was also more work. It was hard for Olivia to work physically, but where could she go? She was lucky to be hired. At the interview, the girl carefully disguised her belly with a loose blouse. Then, of course, the boss told her everything. Came then, with a belly to work, got an official job, now the sick leave will go, then you will go on maternity leave. Do you realize you've set us up? All you orphanages are like that, clever and cunning. Olivia was silent. Of course, it wasn't good to hide the fact that she was pregnant when she was employed. It wasn't fair, but what choice did she have? Olivia did not need any sick leave. The pregnancy was surprisingly easy. She went on maternity leave at the right time, and then continued to clean floors unofficially. She needed to save as much money as possible. For the birth of her daughter, Olivia prepared thoroughly. She bought a crib, a stroller, clothes for the newborn. She didn't have enough money for a new one, and who cares? The main thing, very soon she will have a daughter, the only relative in this not cozy world. For her sake, Olivia will make mountains, and everything will be fine. The girl was born on October 15. Ashley immediately announced the labor room with a loud scream, which caused a stream of compliments, and from the midwife. How strong and healthy she is, and what a voice, and what a beauty. Olivia had long ago decided to name the girl Ashley. Olivia clutched her daughter to her chest, looked at her wrinkled red face. Tears rolled down the cheeks of the new mother. She could not cope with the feelings and emotions that overwhelmed her. Now that she had a child of her own, she understood her parents even less. How could they give up on her? Do these people now live quietly somewhere, knowing that they left their daughter, just abandoned at the train station, and fled? Olivia has vague memories of her early childhood. Sometimes she dreamed of something from those distant times, but all as if in a fog. No wonder, because when the policeman found Olivia at the train station, frightened and frozen, she was only 3 years old. The woman still remembered that moment. She was alone among a crowd of people. Everyone is in a hurry. The train is rumbling loudly nearby. She is scared and very hungry. A pack of stray dogs running past. For some reason, Olivia remembered these animals best of all, large, dirty, with tangles of bunched-up hair on their sides, but it was not them that the girl was afraid of. She was afraid of being alone. Before that, there had been grown-up people with her grown-up, probably parents. They had ridden trains together, run somewhere, sat on dark, cold staircases with crowds of people scurrying up and down them. Sometimes one of them would drop a coin into the box next to Olivia. The woman still remembered that small detail, the clinking sound of the coins hitting the bottom. As she grew older, she realized that her parents must have been asking for alms. But why? What had happened? Why did they not work, but picked up? Olivia did not look like a gypsy, blue eyes, light blonde hair. The police tried to look for the girl's parents, but the investigation was fruitless, so Olivia became a pupil of an orphanage at the age of 3.5. From her relatives, she had only a name and a pendant in the form of a key, a silver piece of jewelry on a simple cord. It was around her neck the day she was found at the train station. Olivia knew her own name very well, even at the age of 3, and confidently told it to the policeman, but the surname and address the girl, unfortunately, has not yet memorized. Olivia tried to remember the names of her parents, but nothing worked. But once she knew them exactly. Apparently, she had lost some of her memory due to stress. Stress had a devastating effect on the foundling. Finding herself in an unfamiliar environment, Olivia suddenly stopped speaking, as if she had become numb. Psychologists and speech therapists tried to work with her, but nothing helped. In the end, the child was abandoned and diagnosed with mental retardation. The disease scared away potential adopters from the pretty girl, so in childhood Olivia never found a new family. True then, after almost 10 years, Olivia came to her senses, thawed, speech returned, but it was too late. Teenagers are of little interest to adopters. They prefer babies. Until the 7th grade, Olivia was in a remedial class. After the return of speech, it turned out that she is very capable and speaks beautifully, and complex problems can solve. Teachers and educators were surprised, but what could they do? Yes, the girl is talented, but the time was lost. After the 9th grade, the administration sent Olivia to study at a culinary college. You are a smart girl, you will finish, and then, if you want, go to the university to study further, and so at least specialty bread in hand will be. Hungry will not stay hungry. Doris, the director of the orphanage, reasoned aloud. Olivia agreed with her. The girl was standing in Doris's office and nervously rubbing a pendant, the one from her past life, which she hardly remembered. The pendant. Olivia had cherished it as the only link between her and her family. It must have been worn around the little girl's neck by kind, caring hands. So someone loved her after all, if they made such a gift. There were some pleasant feelings associated with the pendant. Olivia felt as if she had asked someone to buy it for her. The little girl liked the key on the string very much. She was jumping on the spot and begging to make her a present. But who? Someone tall, kind. Face is lost in the fog, but it is clear that this person's smiling mom, dad, uncle, family friend? It's hard to live without roots and without at least some information about relatives. Who is she? Where did she come from? How was her childhood? Does she have any siblings? What happened to her? And why did her parents abandon her, leaving her at the train station? As a teenager, Olivia invented the most unbelievable stories on this subject and always found good reasons for her parents' actions. They were pursued by bandits who wanted to take away Olivia's influential father's business, and Mom and Dad left her at the train station to save their daughter from the massacre. The girl imagined that she was taken by gypsies to beg for alms. By the way, the police worked on this version for some time, but no ends were found. I didn't want to think that she was the daughter of alcoholics and marginalized people who just didn't need a child, even though it was the most plausible option. How many of you are such babies? One of the educators was lamenting, looking at Olivia. I have a lot of experience, and in almost all cases, when babies were found at train stations and markets, their parents turned out to be unworthy people. You're lucky to be alive. You could have fallen on the tracks under the train, or dogs would have dragged you away, because such cases happen. The little girl Olivia did not believe that her parents could be one of those miserable creatures that sometimes came to the orphanage to visit their children. Skinny, wrinkled, ragged, with swollen faces, many without teeth. They always smelled pungent and unpleasant. Freaks! The nurse was indignant. They only need the children for their allowance, so that they have something to drink on. When they run out of money, they immediately remember their parental duty and come crawling back for their children, and children in these families are only misfortune. They'd be better off here in the State House. You probably have the same mom, and your dad may not even know about your existence. At first, the girl did not believe that her parents are marginalized, but as she grew older, she realized that this option is not excluded. Except for the silver pendant, such a beautiful, exquisite thing. Well, could not lowered creatures, like those that sometimes crawled into the orphanage, to choose a child such a piece of jewelry? Olivia cherished the pendant as the apple of her eye, and even went to bed with it around her neck. One day the girl found that the jewelry was gone. She was still in the 3rd grade and did not speak. What at hysterics through, a small, quiet girl, Olivia still remembered the despair that came over her at that moment. It seemed that along with the pendant, the hope for the future, for meeting her parents, for everything to be all right, was lost. Olivia was screaming, convulsing, unable to eat or drink. When her strength left her, she just sat in the corner, swaying and howling softly. One of the caregivers realized what was wrong. While the doctor and teachers were trying to cope with the little girl, the woman rushed to the gym, where Olivia had recently had a class, and found the pendant. It had fallen into a crevice between the mats. Seeing the jewelry, Olivia immediately smiled. The girl's tears dried on her face. A happy expression appeared. Olivia hugged the not indifferent kindergarten teacher tightly. The staff exhaled. The problem was solved. It was a pity that not all the staff of the orphanage were as attentive as that young teacher. During the years spent in the institution, Olivia had to endure a lot: insult and humiliation of adults, mockery of peers, and even beatings. The girl tolerated and waited for the moment when she would finally become free and independent. And now what Olivia had never even dreamed of, she had a daughter, her own child. For this she had to leave college. Olivia, you have to earn money and take care of the child. What is there to study? She will get education later. Now the main thing is her daughter, so beautiful, so defenseless. Next to her, Olivia felt very grown up and very strong. Ashley would have a real childhood, with birthdays, walks with her mother around the city, beautiful dresses, and her own shared toys. Olivia would do everything for that. And the young mom tried very hard. She worked hard and gave all her free time to her daughter. Ashley grew up a healthy and smart girl. She answered her mother with love and care. Already at the age of 7, Ashley learned to cook, and the girl knew how to clean since the middle group of kindergarten. The little girl saw how hard it was for her mother and tried to help her in everything, and she also studied well. Ashley did not need to force to do homework. 4s were rare guests in her diary. Adam never once took an interest in the child, but Olivia did not expect miracles. She no longer believed in them. Once she met the father of her daughter in the mall. He was walking in the arms of a pretty girl, smiling his trademark charming smile, looking fascinated companion in the eyes. How familiar was all this? Young Olivia had once lost her head at such behavior from Adam, and he had turned out to be a traitor and a coward. Probably, this pretty girl was going to be disappointed too. Olivia even felt a little sorry for her. Of course, the woman realized that there would come a moment when Ashley would ask her questions about her father, and she had no idea what to say to the child. She certainly didn't want to lie, and she didn't want to keep quiet either. Olivia knew exactly what it was like to live without knowing anything about her parents. Her daughter, of course, was luckier. She had a mother. But it was important to know about her father, Ashley, too. How complicated is this? Olivia hoped her daughter wouldn't be approaching her with a serious conversation anytime soon. Here was the office building finally reached. A security guard opened the door for Olivia. The man in his 40s always smiled and winked at the young cleaning lady when she came to work. The woman did not respond to these flirtations. So, there are enough problems and things to do. There is simply no time for romance, no desire either. The building, as always, greeted Olivia with silence and semi-darkness. The employees are probably just waking up and starting to get ready for work, and before they arrive, they have to wipe the floors in the corridors and offices. The equipment and uniform room was under the stairs. Olivia entered it, put on a robe, tucked her hair under her headscarf, looked at herself in the mirror. She is not yet 30, but what a tired look, and these dark circles under the eyes. Something must be done about it. Should I buy some face cream? On the neck glittered her favorite jewelry, the same silver key. Olivia still did not part with the pendant from the past. It became for her a kind of talisman. It seemed that the little key was a protection from all troubles and misfortunes. I wish I knew who had put it on her the first time. Would it remain a secret forever? Smiling at her reflection, the woman took a bucket and a mop and went to the top floor. She always started cleaning from the top. Sebastian sat in his office working on the next report that the accountant had brought him to sign. The figures were pleasing. His construction company was thriving. Profits were steadily increasing. The number of clients was growing. Things were going up, and that was fine. Sebastian, can I make you some coffee? Kathy's secretary, a nice girl, came into the office. The daughter of his former classmate could not find a job after college. Sebastian did not refuse. His friends and acquaintances often addressed him with such requests. He himself had very young children, but as young children, schoolchildren. Jordan was in the 8th grade. Nora was finishing the 5th. Wonderful, cute guys. Wife Adriana did not work after the birth of their first child. She devoted herself to her children, took them to developmental classes from an early age, and their heirs were also seriously involved in sports, their son in hockey and their daughter in rhythmic gymnastics. All this, of course, required a lot of investment, time, money, and effort. As for the financial side, Sebastian fully provided for the family from start to finish. Everything else was on Adriana's shoulders, and the results were impressive. From time to time, his wife invited Sebastian to competitions and tournaments where the children always demonstrated excellent results. The man was proud of Jordan and Nora and loved them and his young wife very much. Business, financial stability, a large, cozy house, a friendly family, smart and beautiful wife, always understands everything, no scandals, supports. It would seem, what else is needed for happiness? But Sebastian could not call himself happy. Lived in his soul pain, which will never go anywhere, and the man was well aware of it. Sebastian had once had a completely different life. Then he worked at the factory as a milling machine operator and was happy with a salary that was only slightly higher than the average for their provincial town. But the man at that time was very proud of himself and was happy and carefree. Sebastian could not afford, as he does now, an expensive saloon car or a vacation abroad. He paid the loan for an imported refrigerator and invited his wife to a restaurant, only on holidays. Not Adriana. Then Sebastian was married to a neighbor girl, Doris. But despite this, the man felt much happier than he did now, being a successful entrepreneur and father of 2 wonderful children. Kathy entered the office with a steaming cup of coffee, tall, slender, blonde, bright blue eyes, so similar to. No, better not to remember, too painful, too hard. Sebastian, so much time and money spent on a psychologist. It was a relief for a while, but then the pain and the memories came back. You just have to learn to live with it. Sometimes Sebastian managed to do it. There are so many things to do, so many daily worries and troubles. The firm requires a lot of time and attention. Children every day please with new successes. Loving, beautiful wife distracts with talks about the future. So nice to make plans and dreams together with her. In this whirlwind, heavy thoughts for a while retreated, but it was worth to stop for a while or to see something that reminded of those times, some insignificant detail, as the experienced nightmare came with a new force, like now. Kathy had just brought coffee, and in the midday sunlight, her beautiful blue eyes shone especially brightly. Sebastian immediately thought of other eyes, curious, loving, wide open, and just as blue. They were the eyes of his oldest daughter, his girl, who was now older than Kathy. The last time he saw her, she was 3 years old. Now Olivia is 29 years and 3 months old. Sebastian mentally set the candles on her birthday cake every year, and of course he knew exactly the age of his oldest daughter. That she was living somewhere now, perhaps under a different first and last name, the man had no doubt. The facts said otherwise, but the father felt Olivia was alive, except that finding her was unlikely. He had tried then, and years later too, but no trace of Olivia had ever been found. Guilt and irreparable loss became Sebastian's constant companions. His happiness after the incident was never complete. Sebastian could name the exact day when he last felt calm and relaxed. It was the date of Olivia's disappearance, Sunday, his day off. That day, Sebastian had decided to give Doris some rest. Olivia and I will go to the ponds, walk there, feed the swans, and you rest, because you complain about being tired all the time, said the caring husband, Doris. How great! Sincerely pleased wife. Such wonderful weather. Why should the girls stay at home all day? While you're away, I'll cook something delicious. So that's what it means for you to rest. Sebastian joked. His mood was high. He was proud of his new role as a young father and always enjoyed taking his daughter for walks. He liked to make her happy, and now, when the little girl is only 3 years old, it is so easy. Olivia is genuinely surprised by the most ordinary things and considers her daddy, almost a magician, an unreal pleasant feeling. I'll have time to rest and make goodies, Doris replied. Especially cooking for my loved ones is a real pleasure. Sebastian hugged his wife. They had known each other since childhood. At Olivia's age, Sebastian and Doris, along with the other kids in their house, had been playing in the sandbox. Then they had been in the same class. Sebastian couldn't even remember life without Doris. She was always there, a kindred, understanding, and reliable person. And when Olivia came along, their family became truly happy. Sebastian remembered how he met his wife from the hospital. His family and friends were with him. Sebastian was holding a huge bouquet of roses, and for some reason he was very excited. Finally, Doris appeared on the doorstep with a tight bundle tied with a lush pink bow. Sebastian pulled back the corner of the blanket and stared in amazement at the little girl. The girl was sleeping soundly, with thick dark eyelashes like his own on her chubby cheeks. Sebastian had been jokingly reproached in his childhood for having long eyelashes, and some girl had not gotten such wealth, and now he saw the same ones on his daughter. There was another resemblance, a small mole above the upper lip. The man still remembered his feelings from the first meeting. He was rolled by a warm wave of love and tenderness. He wanted to become a reliable protector for this defenseless baby. Their daughter would be happy. He would give her everything she needed for a secure childhood. He would shelter her from the hardships of life, fill her every day with joy. Sebastian no longer remembered that he had once dreamed of a son. This girl, this sweet baby, in the blink of an eye became for him the center of the universe. The man could hardly hold back tears from his feelings, not enough to cry in front of everyone, but Doris, of course, realized what was happening to her husband. She looked at him and smiled. Later, when Jordan and then Nora were born, Sebastian felt nothing of the sort. Sure, he was happy to have a son and a daughter, but the feeling that the world had turned upside down, that didn't happen. Maybe because Sebastian was already an adult, an established man with a sad past? Or was the novelty effect missing, like when you meet your firstborn? Either way, Sebastian was much more relaxed about the birth of his youngest child than he was about Olivia. The man himself chose the name for his first daughter, Olivia. Doris did not object. She liked it too. The couple together took care of the newborn. With joy and amazement watched the development of the baby, proud of her successes. She was evolving. Sebastian shouted in delight when the daughter stood up in the crib for the first time by herself, on not yet firm legs, and how much joy there was from the first steps, complimentary feeding, another vaccination, a new hairstyle. Everything became a grand event for loving parents. And then Olivia spoke early. She was not even 1.5 years old, the realized word that said the girl was daddy. The father's pride and joy was unbounded. He was ready to tell everyone that his adored daughter now addresses him properly. Someone said that if the child said the first word daddy, then the next child would be a son. Sebastian, on the one hand, of course, dreamed of an heir, but on the other hand, it would have to share the attention, which now goes to his favorite daughter, with another child. No, perhaps it is too early. Let Olivia be the only princess in their family. The girl grew up fast. It's already been 3 years since Sebastian took her from the hospital. This third day of birth of his favorite child, the man remembered forever. After all, the next time he had already blown out the candles on Olivia's birthday cake, just mentally, 4 candles. Then guests came to their apartment, grandparents on both sides, brother Sebastian and his daughters, and sister Doris and her sons. It was noisy and fun. Olivia was so happy about the holiday and presents, hugging everyone in turn, laughing gleefully, playing with cousins and sisters, and Sebastian admired his princess, and once again amazed at how much she resembled himself as a child. And he was not the only one who noticed it. Olivia, of course, was everyone's favorite, and not even because of the fact that she was the youngest in a large family. It's just that there are such sincere, friendly children who create around themselves a special aura of joy, ease. Next to them, everyone seems better and kinder to themselves. Olivia was just such a girl, open, cheerful, trusting. A gift, not a child. Sometimes Sebastian, listening to the stories of colleagues and acquaintances about their children, envied himself. He was very lucky with his daughter, and with his wife too. The young man quite consciously enjoyed his happiness and mentally thanked fate for it, but everything changed on that sunny May day when Sebastian decided to take his daughter for a walk on the ponds. The ponds. It was, and still is, a gorgeous park not far from their town. Just one stop by train or half an hour by car, but Sebastian didn't have a car yet, so it was decided to travel by train. This park had everything for a wonderful vacation with children. Magnificent nature, attractions, numerous cafes with delicious ice cream, a couple of pizzerias, and of course, the ponds themselves, several large artificial ponds with swans, which their children and adults loved to feed. Doris had dressed her daughter that morning in a new comfortable tracksuit and made her a beautiful hairdo of small braids. The little girl looked like a doll, a modern doll and very fashionable. Sebastian liked to walk by the hand with a beautiful girl. People were looking at them. The man noticed it. Together they looked just wonderful, a young statuesque father and a charming daughter. The mood was wonderful. A couple of stops to the train station, father and daughter walked. It would have been possible to wait for the bus, but the weather was so wonderful that they did not want to shake in a stuffy, dusty, crowded cabin. At the train station, Sebastian bought a ticket for himself. Children under 7 did not have to pay the fare. It was 15 minutes before the train arrived. Father and daughter decided to walk around the local stores. In one of them they bought themselves a hot dog and a glass of water. Very tasty. Olivia remarked with her mouth full, Yes, Sebastian agreed. But it's not good for you. But we won't get carried away. We can have a little. Having refreshed themselves, the man and the girl continued their shopping trip. Somewhere there was a stall with toys, Chinese consumer goods, but Olivia was happy every time with a new doll or a ball from this stall, so Sebastian looked for a familiar stall. He wanted to please the girl. Suddenly Olivia noticed a beautiful shiny sign, a costume jewelry store. Recently, the little girl realized her belonging to the female gender, loved her mother's cosmetics and jewelry. The girl recently used up her wife's favorite perfume, just poured a bottle of expensive perfume on her jacket, and she also begged her parents to pierce her ears to wear earrings like Lucy from kindergarten. The wife was going to take her daughter to this procedure next weekend. Of course, the young fashionista could not miss such an interesting store. Sebastian followed his daughter with a smile. Looking at the sparkling trinkets, Olivia oohed and ahed, which amused the saleswoman. "I want this." She pointed her finger at a massive bracelet of brightly colored stones. "No, the best is this." This time the girl's attention was attracted by an open-work tiara. Sebastian realized they couldn't leave here without buying it. But what would suit a little girl like Olivia? Not a ring with amber to give her. The saleswoman helped. She pulled out a box with small light pendants, silver-plated and gold-plated, with and without stones, and most importantly shapes, bears, hearts, ballerinas, just the thing for a child. Olivia greedily looked at all this splendor. At first her eyes were scattered, but then she confidently pulled out of the pile a key, thin, graceful, light. Sebastian noted to himself that his girl seemed to have good taste. "Excellent choice." The saleswoman smiled. "It's silver. I'll find you a lanyard to match it, so you can wear it around your neck." Olivia left the store happy. She thanked her father and the salesman 1,000 times. And now she was walking along the platform, and on her neck was a lanyard with a silver key. The girl carried herself like a real lady, and Sebastian marveled. Women seemed to have a love of jewelry in their blood, since such a tiny girl was happy with a silver pendant. Sebastian and Olivia had a wonderful time at the ponds, feeding the swans, riding the carousel, eating ice cream and pizza. Sociable Olivia, as always, made new friends and played with the children on the playground for hours. Time flew by. It was time to go home. The train was coming. Olivia reluctantly said goodbye to the girls and boys she had had so much fun with. Taking her father's hand, she obediently walked with him to the station. Among the crowd waiting, Sebastian immediately noticed them, 3 boys in their 20s. They behaved insolently and swaggeringly, swearing, not at all embarrassed by the presence of small children, and no one dared to reprimand them. It was more expensive. Sebastian also kept silent, better to stay away from such subjects, not enough to fight in front of Olivia. He can't let his daughter go through that kind of stress. So Sebastian prudently moved away from the suspicious company. Unfortunately, the trio turned out to be their neighbors on the carriage. In the train they behaved just as insolently and swaggeringly. The guys sat at the other end of the cabin and did not miss the opportunity to tease any of the passengers. People tried not to respond. They realized that this would be an excuse for more active and obviously unsafe actions on the part of the troublemakers. Sebastian looked thoughtfully at the fields and forests running past. The sun was beginning to set. Olivia was tired from the walk and the experience and had fallen asleep. She was so sweet, so defenseless. Sebastian smiled, looking at his daughter. He wasn't going to wake her up. When the train arrives at the station, the man will gently take her in his arms and carry her home, as he has done many times before. The girl is still so small, so light, just like a piece of fluff. Is it possible that one day this button will turn into a grown-up girl? Surely she will be a real beauty, with those blue eyes. If you want to smoke, you'll have to go out into the vestibule. While the daughter is asleep, you can take advantage of the situation. The man covered the girl with his jacket. At that moment, he could not think that he was doing it for the last time. It seemed to leave for only a couple of minutes. What could happen in this short period of time? The peaceful clatter of the wheels was soothing, bringing back memories of his own childhood, when he'd traveled with his father on the train, just as Olivia was now. But only not for a walk in the park, but to the village to his grandparents, now his father himself. The door opened abruptly, and the same three guys who had been making noise on the platform and in the carriage came out into the vestibule. Sebastian tensed. Something told him that this was no accident. Nothing good could be expected. One of the guys asked for cigarettes. Sebastian didn't object and handed them 3. "Thank you." Exaggeratedly polite was the requester's reply. Apparently the leader, and even bowed gracefully. Sebastian nodded and was about to leave, but he was blocked by the oldest of the group, a man of about 30. "Wait," the leader asked. "We have something to do with you. At the station we saw that you have a lot of money in your wallet, so why don't you share it with us?" Sebastian realized that there was no way to avoid trouble now, so he gave them the money. But where's the guarantee they'll back off after that? And then, if he honored their request, his family would have nothing to live on for the rest of the month. Get into a fight? But the odds are stacked against him, and Olivia would be frightened. While the man was pondering, the ringleader decided for him. He gave Sebastian a fist in the jaw with a swing. The man's eyes flashed brightly, and he became dizzy. The man, not thinking about what he was doing, automatically retaliated. Sebastian boxed from the age of 10 to 16. The left hook was excellent. The attacker grabbed his head, staggered, almost fell, but the man was immediately attacked by 2 other scumbags. The blows came from all sides. Sebastian was hit in the head, kicked in the back, in the stomach. He couldn't stay on his feet, slumped down on the cold, dirty floor of the vestibule. He tried to cover his head with his hands, but the feet and fists of the hooligans still found a target. At some point, the man realized that he was passing out. There was a strange ringing in his ears, and his eyes went dark. Sebastian fell into a frightening but salutary blackness, where there was no pain or fear. He woke up in the hospital, opened his eyes, and immediately closed them again. The whiteness of the walls and furniture, coupled with the bright sunlight penetrating the room through the open window, was blinding and gave him a headache. He was in a hospital room, his whole body aching as if a train had recently run over him. Or maybe it had. The last thing the man remembered was a hail of blows from all sides and pain, unbearable pain. What had happened to him? How did he end up here? A nurse entered the room, rolling an IV in front of her. Noticing that the patient woke up, the girl smiled warmly. "You did well, you made it. And you came in a very serious condition. No one gave a prognosis." "What? What happened to me?" Sebastian was surprised at how weak his own voice sounded. It hurt to move his lips for some reason. "You were attacked in the vestibule, beaten and robbed, then thrown off the train at full speed. It's a miracle you survived. And your daughter?" "I had a little girl with me, my daughter." Anxiety suddenly squeezed Sebastian's heart with an icy hand. The pain and horror of what had happened receded. All this suddenly seemed unimportant. The main thing was to find out where Olivia was now. "The daughter?" The nurse lowered her eyes. "You will talk to your wife about it later. Now you should rest and gain strength. The injuries are serious and—" "Call your wife," Sebastian demanded. He had to know Olivia's fate at all costs. "I'll call her and let her know you're awake," the nurse promised. "Visiting hours are from 4 to 7. She'll be there for sure. No visitors are allowed in the ICU, but the head doctor will make an exception for you." "Why?" "Well, your case is special," the nurse answered evasively. Sebastian barely waited for Doris to arrive, while he was tormented by uncertainty and speculation. Olivia woke up, didn't see her father, must have cried, attracted the attention of the conductor. She, of course, took her to the police. They found Doris, and she took the girl away. Oh, his little girl was scared. It's all his fault. Why did he leave the girl alone? Couldn't he have waited till he got home? The man was overcome with questions. Why didn't the nurse tell him his daughter was all right? And what did that mean, a special case? The nurse said his wife would only be allowed to see him because it was a special case. What does that mean? Doris burst into the room at 4 o'clock sharp, pale, thin, with shot hair, not at all like his calm and always well-groomed wife. The young woman seemed to have aged dramatically. Deep shadows lingered under her eyes. Her features were sharpened, and her eyes, they were alien and frightening, with despair and terror frozen in them. "Where is Olivia?" Sebastian was the first to ask, struggling to rise on his elbow. Looking at his wife, he wasn't sure he wanted to hear the answer. "She's gone." Tears rolled from Doris' eyes. "She's gone, she's gone. Do you understand? You've come to your senses. That's good, because now you can remember some details that will help you find her." "Missing how?" Sebastian's voice trailed off into a falsetto. The realization of what had happened came over him in heavy waves, making him dizzy. Everything that was happening was like a horror movie or a dream, a nightmare. "Our daughter disappeared without a trace. The police are looking for her, interviewing witnesses, but so far, no leads. The men who beat you up have been found. They're in jail. They're investigating you, but they had nothing to do with Olivia's disappearance. We know that for a fact. Sebastian had only himself to blame for everything that happened. Why had he gone to the ponds with his daughter that day? How could he leave her alone even for a minute? Why hadn't he avoided a fight with 3 scumbags for her sake? The physical wounds healed relatively quickly, but the mental wounds did not. After what had happened, Sebastian was no longer the same person. The weight of guilt pressed down on him with an unbearable weight. The police searched for Olivia. The whole city and neighboring stations along the train route, several months were pasted with photos of the girl. There were witnesses who saw a similar little girl in the company of 2 dirty, ragged women. They asked for alms in the crossing, but this thread led nowhere. Sebastian and Doris lived in anxious anticipation, the unknown depressing. The wife did not accuse Sebastian directly, but she did not object when the man called himself names for leaving the child alone. At the time, Sebastian wished he had a time machine, wishing he could go back to the fateful evening. He would hold Olivia's hand, would not let go for a second. The man couldn't even look at the cigarettes now. The couple shuddered with each call. They gave hope and fear. What if now they would tell them that everything was over, that nothing could be fixed? Time passed. The investigation did not move. Olivia was considered missing. The unknown is exhausting mentally and physically. Sebastian could not sleep, and if he forgot to sleep, he had nightmares. The same happened to Doris. After about a year, my wife couldn't take it anymore, packed her things and went to her parents. "I can't be in this apartment. It's too hard, with her things and you here," Doris explained. Sebastian didn't try to hold her back. He realized that she blamed him for what had happened to her daughter, and he agreed with her. Who else was to blame but him? Sebastian was left alone in an empty apartment, once so cozy and warm. Nothing brought relief, neither walking 20 kilometers a day, nor immersing himself in work. Sebastian couldn't eat, he couldn't eat. Immediately I thought, I'm sitting here in the bright kitchen, in front of a plate of pasta, and where is Olivia now? What is she eating? How is she feeling? Sebastian began to doubt that his daughter was alive after 3 years of fruitless searching. By then, he had become a shadow of himself. The man knew from mutual acquaintances that Doris had been hospitalized, unable to withstand the strain. He felt that he himself was close to the same. Salvation came unexpectedly. One day a neighbor from the second floor, a marginal man about 40 years old, came to the fire with a bottle of cheap booze. Sebastian found a snack. The feeling dulled. The world shone with new colors. The man for the first time in several years experienced something like relief. However, the morning despair and guilt came with a new force. This was joined by a hard hangover, but Sebastian already knew what to do. So the man became addicted to the bottle. He soon lost his job. And understandably, who needs such an employee? But Sebastian didn't worry about it. The house was full of things that quickly found buyers: appliances, furniture, outerwear. The man had taken almost everything out of the apartment. Only Olivia's belongings had not been touched. In rare moments, the man realized how worthless his life was now. Why is he even needed in the world? He's a little over 30, and he doesn't want to live at all anymore. He has nothing bright and good anymore, and will not have it. Sebastian has seriously decided that he doesn't want to stay in this world any longer. This was the only way he could end his suffering once and for all, by making a final decision. The man felt calm and even relieved. Soon it would all stop. One morning, tormented by a hangover, he was walking to a local bar. Suddenly, Sebastian's attention was attracted by a strange procession. A woman in a white robe was walking along the sidewalk. She was carrying a stroller in which sat a baby boy of about 3 years old. The same one Olivia had been in when she disappeared. Clinging to the stroller on either side were another boy and a girl. The pair of crumbs stomped obediently alongside, all of the children dressed in identical costumes. They were very different from the usual babies, not making noise, not trying to scatter, not laughing. The children looked beyond serious and sad. Sebastian, who, as it seemed to him, had long ago become callous to other people's misfortune, his heart sank at the sight of this picture. He realized that he had met the abandoned babies from the nearest orphanage. The weather had warmed up outside, and the teacher took the children for a walk outside the gate. The man stared in amazement at the departing company. The teacher looked like a chicken surrounded by little chickens, defenseless, abandoned, and in need of no one. The life of these crumbs had just begun, and they had already faced such a misfortune, ended up in an orphanage. What is waiting for them in this world? Who will help them? Who will support them? Sebastian remembered how much love and care their Olivia had received. That warmth was vital to the babies. Sebastian suddenly realized that it was too early for him to say goodbye to this world. After all, he may still be useful to someone, to make someone's fate easier and happier. There are so many weak people around, needing protection, and he is a healthy, strong man with a working profession in his hands and brains, and such a man can roll mountains if he wants to. No more wasting potential on booze and heavy thoughts. Sebastian is determined to change his life. His daughter is irretrievably lost. It is his fault, but now he has a new goal: to become strong, rich, influential, and make the lives of children who need help better and more pleasant. The man gave up drinking. It turned out to be surprisingly easy. He got a job at the factory again, worked for 3, saved money, gained experience, and after a couple of years, opened his first firm for repair and construction. Employees recruited from his own colleagues, money for materials, and the most necessary equipment he had set aside. So began his journey in business. He had to learn, reorganize, solve problems arising at every step. But everything worked out. The firm grew and strengthened. Soon we had to open a branch, then the next. At first the office served as an apartment Sebastian, but after some time it became clear it is time to rent a separate building because the turnover of the company grew by the hour, not by the day. The number of clients and staff increased at the same pace. Sebastian had money. Being a factory worker, the man thought he was earning quite well, but now he had completely different opportunities. Sebastian could easily buy an expensive foreign car in a car dealership, go to the warm sea at any time of the year, afford a large house, and all at once. But the man was in no hurry to please himself with these benefits. He continued to live in his old apartment and drove a budget car. Sebastian spent most of his earnings on business development to have even more income in the future, and every month he spent a lot of money on orphanages and hospitals, transferred money to funds to help sick children, and he also made monthly transfers to Doris's card. She developed a nervous disease that required expensive treatment. The man disguised his help. Doris thought she was receiving benefits from the state. Sebastian was not sure that his ex-wife would accept money from him. By the way, Doris remarried to a lowly library employee, a guy much younger than herself. They had a son. It would seem that the woman's life was getting better, which Sebastian was very happy. But the disease did not recede, the man knew from mutual acquaintances. Someone did not understand the successful businessman, considered him abnormal. It's a joke, such sums of money regularly spent, it is unclear on what, but most people around Sebastian respected him for his generosity and kindness. Of course, around a wealthy and successful man led a lot of hunters for his heart. Beauties of different ages sought to get the favor of a talented businessman, even quite young and handsome at the same time, but Sebastian remained indifferent to the admirers. It seemed that in his life there is only work and help people who need it. Years went by. Sebastian's company became one of the most successful in the city. The man's name appeared on the list of the richest men in the state, and now he lived in a country house. He liked this area, quiet, calm, no one noises under the windows, and no one working with a drill from morning to night. The man often visited the orphanages, played with the kids, assessed the situation, learned about the needs of the orphanages. Sebastian looked closely at the faces of abandoned children, especially girls who looked like Olivia. What if his daughter had been raised in a similar place? Sebastian realized, of course, that even if she was, Olivia was already an adult, he would not find her here. On one such trip, Sebastian met an incredible girl. Adriana had been volunteering since she was a teenager, first in animal shelters and then in orphanages. The staff praised the responsible student. From the words of the staff, Sebastian realized that the girl spends every free minute in the orphanage, plays with the kids, comes up with interesting developmental activities for them, and even does the most difficult work, which often causes squeamishness and older people, caring for children who cannot walk. Such indifference is rare among today's youth. Summarized the director of the orphanage. I don't know what we would do without Adriana. We are very short of hands. She is our lifesaver. Sebastian wanted to talk to the selfless girl. She was very pretty, tall, swarthy, with big brown eyes in which shone pity and kindness. An unusual and very appealing combination. The girl was in graduate school at the Faculty of Foreign Languages, preparing to get a degree. She needed languages to work for an international volunteer organization, and a degree would allow her to teach and convince students to help those in need. While Adriana's peers dreamed of a successful marriage, she herself dreamed of working with starving African children. Adriana was a young woman, only 6 or 7 years older than Olivia, but Sebastian felt a kindred spirit in her, just as he did. The girl could not pass by another's misfortune. She did not leave indifferent, helpless children in need of support. Adriana turned out to be a very interesting conversationalist. She knew a lot about many things. Her judgments were deep and wise beyond her years. Sebastian caught every word of his new acquaintance. She also enjoyed talking to him, and it was very noticeable. One day, Sebastian realized that he had fallen in love. He had never imagined that after everything that had happened to him, such a thing could happen. The man fell asleep and woke up with thoughts of Adriana, with impatience and even inner trepidation, waiting for meetings with her. Sebastian tried to hide his feelings. He is much older, and even with such a weight of guilt on his shoulders. Why would a fresh young girl need all this? She has so many plans, so many aspirations. Yet the man felt that she cared for him too. Adriana was the first to confess her love. They were just helping to unload a car with boxes of baby food for the children of the orphanage. The purchase was paid for by Sebastian. It so happened that in the kitchen, where the director asked them to take the boxes, they were all alone. I couldn't hide it any longer. Adriana suddenly made up her mind. She looked into Sebastian's eyes. You. Anyway, I think I love you and I don't know what to do with all this now. It's unexpected and very pleasant. Sebastian smiled. The girl's words made a strong impression on him, and the man was even confused. The last time this had happened to him had been a long time ago. I know exactly what it looks like. Adriana continued, lowering her eyes. Another girl trying to seduce a rich man. You what? Sebastian gently took her palms in his hands. Could you even let me think that? Couldn't I? My friend, when I told her what I thought exactly that, and she complimented me on my wisdom. So this friend doesn't know you at all. Sebastian was glad to be able to finally tell Adriana how he felt. You're the most incredible person I've ever met. Smart, kind, caring, sincere. Me too. I also can't believe that there are people like you. The girl exclaimed. Me, I'm far from perfect, but I love you. For a long time now, I didn't want to tell you, not to worry you, but it turns out it's mutual and I'm happy. Adriana and Sebastian started dating. They continued to help orphanages, even traveling to a neighboring state. Every day, Sebastian felt that Adriana was becoming closer and closer to him. The man did not delay with the proposal. The girl happily responded with consent. Of course, there were different rumors about them. Then Sebastian accused of infatuation with a young beauty. Then Adriana called Adriana Hunter for millionaires and kept. The spouses cared little. Both enjoyed their newfound happiness, but the trip to poor African countries, which was planned by Adriana, had to be canceled. Soon it turned out that she was pregnant. Sebastian, of course, was happy to know that he would soon become a father, but at the same time he was awakened in fears that had been dormant. Would he be able to protect this child? What if the story with Olivia happened again? Of course, Adriana knew what had happened to her husband's first daughter. The spouses were frank with each other and tried to live without secrets and secrets. The woman supported and comforted her beloved as much as she could. Jordan was born, and a few years later Nora was born. Adriana decided to devote herself to her children. Her career as an interpreter and volunteer work took a back seat. Sebastian marveled at what his son and daughter had accomplished in their younger years. He realized that it was all thanks to Adriana's efforts and patience. The plan was to take a baby, and maybe more than one, from the orphanage. When would Nora and Jordan grow up? After becoming a mother, Adriana realized how little care and warmth orphanage babies receive from volunteers, educators, and other helpers. She had a new idea to give at least a few people from the state institution a full-fledged happy childhood. Sebastian was in solidarity with his wife. Thoughts of Olivia were still going through his mind every day. She was already a grown woman. Where is his daughter now? How is she doing? After becoming a wealthy businessman, Sebastian tried again to find Olivia. When you're rich, you have a whole new set of opportunities. The man hired private investigators, but it was fruitless. Too much time had passed since the child had gone missing, and no leads had been found by the skilled detectives. That day, Sebastian arrived at the office early. He had to finish a few reports before the workday started. The man did not like to stay in the office late. He worked better in the morning, so he left a pile of papers on the desk yesterday. The guard said a polite hello to the chief. He nodded and went to the stairs. There were distinctive rustles from upstairs. The cleaning lady was scrubbing the floor on the second floor. There was a peculiar odor of detergent in the air. Sebastian was blocked by a bucket. He tried to go around it. The cleaning lady noticed it. A young woman with a tired face, strands of blonde hair poking out from under her headscarf. She hurriedly moved the bucket aside so that the boss could pass more comfortably. Sebastian was used to such subservience. Something about this woman interested him. So young, pretty, smart, open face. Couldn't she find a better job? Strange, of course. Careful, the floor is slippery. The cleaning lady said, in a slightly guilty tone. I didn't have time to mop it dry. I thought it wouldn't be long before there were people here. That's all right, Sebastian smiled. And then his gaze focused on a familiar thing from the distant past. On the cleaning lady's chest hung a silver chain with a pendant in the form of a dainty key. It was the piece of jewelry Sebastian had bought on that terrible day when his daughter had disappeared. The man stared at the pendant, and the cleaning lady felt awkward. The woman stood there, not knowing what to do, whether to continue scrubbing the floors or whether the conversation with her boss was not over yet. Sebastian looked closely at the woman's face, big blue eyes, a mole above her lip the same as his. Really? It just can't be? What is your name? The man asked in a husky voice. Olivia. Olivia. My questions will seem strange to you now, Sebastian warned, but it's really important that I know. Is your father's name Ethan? From his middle name. I don't know my father's name. The woman stared at the chief with wide, surprised eyes. Ethan is the name of the policeman who found me at the train station. That's why the orphanage gave me that middle name. His last name, by the way. Her facial expressions, her movements, her voice, everything was so familiar, but Sebastian was afraid to believe in this unexpected happiness, lest he be disappointed. He invited Olivia to his office, where their conversation continued in a more appropriate setting. Sebastian discovered that Olivia had been found at the age of 3 at a train station in a town hundreds of kilometers away. The girl herself remembered little from the stress she'd been under. At least she gave her name, but that was it. Adults tried to find out more about the family and the fate of the child, but they failed. From the stories of eyewitnesses and fragmentary memories of the girl herself, formed more or less plausible version. Olivia was born in a marginalized family. Relatives drove the girl to different cities and earned by asking for alms, and then the little girl grew up. She no longer caused the former pity of passers-by and adults for lack of need left her at the station. And this jewelry? Sebastian pointed his finger at the pendant. Where did you get it from, do you remember? I think it was given to me by one of my parents. I had it on me when they found me at the train station. I always thought it was strange that someone loved me once. You don't give such beautiful things to children you don't care about, do you? Olivia. Sebastian finally decided to voice his speculation. I must tell you my complicated story. Listen and you'll understand why I'm acting so strangely. And Sebastian told the woman in the chair across from him the story of his lost daughter. Olivia grew paler and paler as he told the story, nervously rubbing the pendant around her neck or a strand of hair that had fallen out from under her headscarf. I think I'm even sure that you are my daughter. Finally, the man finished. I want to believe it so badly. Tears came to Olivia's eyes. But I'm afraid of being wrong, and I'm afraid of being disappointed. We could do a DNA test to be sure, but I don't need one. Sebastian's voice was trembling. He wanted to hug Olivia tightly, but he did not know how his daughter would react to it. After all, she did not know him at all, and did not believe in what had happened to the end. Of course, the analysis confirmed the parentage. Olivia and Sebastian felt it even without the laboratory tests, but this way they had proof. Sebastian felt incredibly relieved. Life was bright again. The man had already forgotten what it was like. The weight that had been weighing on him all these years was finally off his shoulders. There was Olivia, his wonderful, beautiful daughter. What's more, he's already a grandfather with a granddaughter, Ashley. It was an amazing feeling. His daughter had had a hard time in life. Listening to her stories, Sebastian felt despair that he could not protect her then from all these hardships. But now everything would be different. Olivia would no longer have to suffer. He would still be for her, and for her granddaughter, a reliable protection and support. With Olivia and the certified DNA test result, Sebastian arrived at Dora's house. She was crying, laughing, hugging her daughter. Olivia seemed to remember her mom. She snuggled up to her and cried too. Doris was visibly on the mend after the arrival of her daughter. Sebastian arranged for Olivia to join his company as an assistant manager. He created a position specifically for his daughter. She had to sort documents, keep track of the schedule of events, something like a secretary. At the same time Olivia was studying at the university by correspondence. The life of a woman before meeting her father was difficult. She did not get an education. Now she was making up for lost time. She liked her studies very much. Olivia and her daughter now lived in her father's mansion. Ashley quickly became friends with Jordan and Nora. The children had fun, and their laughter never ceased. Adriana accepted Olivia and Ashley like family. She was happy that her beloved husband was no longer tormented by guilt. At first, Sebastian was afraid to go to sleep. It seemed that he would wake up and find that the meeting with Olivia was just a dream. He could not believe that there were such coincidences, and there were many coincidences in history. Olivia had gotten a job at his company, not some other company. Sebastian arrived at the office earlier than usual and noticed the pendant around the cleaning lady's neck. Incidentally, the daughter could have lost the jewelry 100 times over the years, but she kept it and, moreover, wore the key around her neck at all times. Without the pendant, Sebastian would hardly recognize Olivia as an employee. There's no such thing as coincidence. Adriana replied to her husband when he shared his thoughts with her. It's all a chain of regularities. Everything happened the way it was supposed to.
Subscribe and click the bell.
A university in a large regional center was considered young. so it did not have the same prestige as, say, a pedagogical one. The university had its own professors, library, and published scientific works. And at the university, the first graduating class of students was prepared to work at the university. From this graduating class, the most significant careers were made by two of them. David became rector and Jacob became a professor. He lectured and was adored by the students. David and Jacob had once been friends, but long ago their paths parted. David was married and raising children. He looked older than his years and was constantly overloaded with things to do. His many responsibilities at the university and at home left him no free time. Looking at David, you would never say that he held a prominent position, a short man of slim build. He'd been wearing a suit for 20 years. His wife could hardly persuade him to wear one she'd buy or knit for him. But David was in love with science. His university, when he talked about its development or transformation, his eyes began to burn with a fanatical gleam if it became clear the man was in his place. Perhaps Jacob was hurt by the fact that he was not the rector. After all, he was once considered the most brilliant student in the course. His thesis was later published in a separate book. He could and liked to talk, was artistic and very good-looking. It's time to be in the movies. In short, if it was necessary to represent the university somewhere, including abroad, he would fit perfectly with this very Dimka, who speaks so fast that you can't always understand him, especially if he is passionate about the topic. Now it's hard to believe that up until the 4th year they were thick as thieves. Every summer they went on archaeological expeditions, and if anything, they stood for each other. At that time, none of them thought about high positions. Dimka, however, even now is completely indifferent to titles and regalia. And when he was offered to move to the ministry, he flatly refused. University was his life, very much his brainchild. Jacob once wanted to be an archaeologist too. He spent his whole life on expeditions. Even at the bottom of the sea, he was ready to search for submerged antiquities. But his parents intervened. It was their initiative, defense of a candidate's thesis, and then a doctorate. Their connections played a big role in the fact that his path to science was smooth, without a hitch. Jacob has been lecturing ever since. At first, he was stuffy in the university walls. He dreamed of the old days, the archaeology camp, the digging, the campfire songs. But he was the only son of his parents. Both his father and mother had overbearing personalities, and he couldn't break free for a while. Then his father died. His mother became ill. He realized that he couldn't go far away. He lived alone. He had a beautiful apartment near the university, but he visited his mother several times a week. If she was feeling well, and if she was ill, he moved in with her for a while. So when acquaintances talked to him about marriage, Jacob, laughing, said that he had an old girl on his hands, so a young wife he would not pull. And his wife would not want to share him with his mother, who had such a difficult character. So past the time when he was considered a promising bachelor in the eyes of society. For him, however, that time was over. After all, even now, when he was well into his 40s, or rather under 50, he retained his imposing appearance, artistry, and sonorous expressive voice. Last years among the students did not sparkle, and not a single bright star. Every year there was an inevitable dropout. Guys were leaving. The last example when 2 students took their documents and got a job at the streetcar depot. There was good money to be made there. Girls got married one after another, took a leave of absence, and went on maternity leave. And those who studied with visible labor got a haul from exam to exam, from course to course. Everyone knew that he was single, and many hoped to screw him. Before, they even argued about who would succeed. Later, the bar was lowered. It became clear that none of the girls, even the most beautiful, will not take to the wedding. But to visit him at home to get credit, it was quite realistic. And there were girls who could tell about these visits, but for some reason they all kept silent. And what happened at the professor's house was not discussed at home. Only Nancy once said, "What a bastard he is." What did that mean? Nancy didn't want to discuss it, and the professor lived his life to his heart's content. A couple of times a year, he would find a companion caregiver for his mother and go on vacation in winter to a ski resort. and in summer to any of the European countries to see the antiquities dear to his heart. When his mother's friends asked her if Igor had finally gotten married, if he had at least had children, the elderly woman only waved away passers-by, and I was completely satisfied with this state of affairs. And as long as she was alive, she wasn't going to share her son with anyone. Kate and Betty became friends by accident. Betty came from a small town. She went to university because she did well here in the regional center. Her aunt lived with her, and Betty settled in. Her house was on the very outskirts of town. It took an hour to get to the university on her aunt's bus. To be honest, there was no time for her niece. She was fighting with her husband. The matter was heading for divorce. At home, there were empty liquor bottles on the cupboard, and the collection was regularly replenished. Her aunt had no children of her own, nor did she have any experience with them, and she looked to Betty for a girlfriend. In the evenings, when the girl was a woman, came to her with another bottle of sweet liquor and 2 glasses. Betty knew that now the aunt would complain to her for a long time about her life, about her husband, and she had to give in and sympathize. It was risky to object, because at any moment the aunt could say go to the dormitory. And Betty didn't want to go there, because the dormitory was really bad. 2 9-story red brick buildings with communicating passages only looked presentable from the outside. Inside there was an atmosphere that showed that the university did not have an extra penny. Ragged walls, elevators that almost never worked. Broken windows in the halls had glass put in, but every now and then they were broken again. The kitchen had 1 stove for the entire floor, so the students kept illegal stoves in their rooms, and the hot water was constantly cut off. In short, only a few students lived in the dormitory from the first year. Until the last, everyone tried to find a couple among the natives of the big city and move in with a friend or girlfriend in normal conditions. Betty tried to study at night, but then she would come to class. Tired in the classroom, she could doze off in lecture, once even hopped and became the subject of ridicule, classmates, and bullying the instructor. He took mortal offense. You see, his lectures make some people drowsy. As a result, Betty had to drop all other subjects and learn only ethnography. To crawl through the session, and the position was difficult. Even a small scholarship meant a lot to her. Betty was raised by one mother, and she could not give her much money. Practically the whole amount Betty gave to her aunt for food, left herself only for travel, and to go to the movies, to buy herself new tights, a common notebook for the lecture. There should have been enough scholarship money to save for all of this. Betty tried to walk more, and once she got lost in an unfamiliar courtyard. She didn't know much of the big city yet, just exploring it. I was attracted to the old ones, and she herself did not notice how she found herself on this quiet street, which literally breathed the 19th century. Realizing that she was lost, Betty began to look around, who would ask for directions. There was a girl about her age sitting on a bench in the courtyard. Betty turned to her and asked, "Where do you want to go?" The girl asked. Actually, Betty had to go home to her aunt. That's why she needed the bus stop number 1. The girl at the marshal in the forehead thinking, "You should go to the highway, but it's far to go there, it's better to go to the streetcar stop." The girl was very beautiful with dark hair around her face. Betty also noticed that the bench sent for now with such a bench is usually used by elderly people who have a hard time moving around. Betty had walked around town a lot this day and now realized she was tired. She sat down next to her acquaintance. The girls got to talking. To Betty's surprise, it turned out that they studied at the same university. "Only I'm at the biology department," Kate explained. "As a part-time student, I couldn't get to the university every day. But when I'm in session, my father drives me." "Do you live here?" Kate nodded at one of the beautiful old houses. "That's our apartment. Lucky you," Betty said. But it was obvious that her envy was light, as they say, white. "Would you try our dorm? The elevator worked 3 days a year maybe. And I live on the 9th floor. I couldn't get up there." Kate laughed. "We also have mice and even rats." Betty chimed in. "Recently a mouse ran right into the middle of the room during the day." "Wow. I thought I was having a glitch. I used to live in the wrong place," said Kate. "Way out in the middle of nowhere. We had mice here first, too. The scariest thing is that they can eat supplies in the winter. Cereal. Then my mom brought a cat. I'd like a cat too. They won't allow it in the dorms. Restrict about pets. Although I know the girls on the 7th floor have a canary. Well, or rather, kinder, and they call him General Secretary in honor of the head of the group, sighed Betty. The girls chatted. It was only when she started blowing her nose that Betty remembered she had to leave. And you're not around much. You could hear the regret in Kate's voice. If you're ever in the area, stop by. Everyone says college is the golden age. I don't have any girlfriends. Kate rose to her feet, and Betty noticed that she was moving with great difficulty, heavy on the stick. She didn't bother to ask what was wrong. Maybe Kate is uncomfortable talking about it, but the girl explained the oldest injury. Maybe if they had operated right away, it would be better now, but there was no opportunity. My dad keeps threatening to send me abroad. They say they'll do the operation there. I'll be able to fly like a butterfly. Betty sighed, and Kate's dad was lucky too. She'd never even been to the sea herself. From then on, Betty, if she made it downtown and herself to the regional library, she was often needed. She always looked into a familiar courtyard and often stood Kate there. The girls chatted about everything in the world. Betty admitted that studying was not easy for her. She was an excellent student at school, but there were so many new subjects at once. To prepare for seminars, you have to sit in the reading room, work with sources, then at bus stops to catch the last bus. And the scariest thing is to get home in dark courtyards. Even the lights are not always on there. I walk with a flashlight. Where do you want to go later? Kate asked. I'd sooner finish the institute and come home. I only have my mom. I miss her. The other girls don't understand me. No one wants to leave here. It's a big city. So many opportunities. They just want to get married, that's all. You haven't fallen in love with anyone here? Kate asked. None of the boys seem to be paying attention to me. There's this one teacher, you know, the star of the screen. Well, she's hoping he'll fall in love with me. That's ridiculous. What if he does? Kate asked slyly. No. But if you go abroad, you could have an affair with some rich foreigner. Are you that pretty? Betty shook his head. I need to heal first. You know, I don't even think about it. I don't even think about it. I want to wander through the woods to our southern lakes, Kate said soberly. Her face became dreamy, but she did not continue the subject, and Betty learned nothing new about her friend. It was only during the session in absentia that she was amazed to see Kate, leaning on a stick, getting out of such a familiar car. Did David bring it to you himself? After a moment, she asked. Of course, I'm his daughter. Kate looked at her in surprise. Didn't you know? I never mentioned it. Well, I didn't have to. Yeah, I hardly ever see my dad. He's always away at work. So it's pretty much just me and my mom. Kate tried to walk so that she was as little visible as possible, but she wasn't very good at it. Nevertheless, she passed the session with flying colors. And not because she was the rector's own daughter. Kate studied with passion and had a memory, which in common parlance is called a photographic page of textbooks. She memorized and retold them verbatim. What she regretted most was that she would not be able to go with the other students on the internship. Kate had only to listen to their enthusiastic stories when they returned. Betty was not doing so well. She couldn't pass her exams and was in danger of not being admitted to the exams. She approached David with mixed feelings. First of all, she really needed his signature on the credit books. And secondly, she seemed to be terribly afraid of the professor. But deep down, she knew what that meant. Betty was in love with him. Betty and Lucky. Jacob was in the office alone sorting through some papers. Usually he was always surrounded by students. Betty approached so timidly that if she had seen herself from the outside, she would have remembered a yard dog determined to enter the house. What did you want? Jacob asked. Without raising her eyes, you can stop talking about Betty. The professor looked at the girl ironically and at the same time evaluating. Betty was not bad at all, medium height with a good figure. Golden red, curly hair falling below her shoulders. Her eyes were a big green. The only thing that spoiled her was her unclean complexion. Betty tried to scrounge up the money for a beautician for treatments. But it rarely worked, and it didn't help much. Jacob sighed. What took you so long? It's Friday. Your exams start next week. Until the credits are closed, you won't even be allowed to take the first one. I know. And why did you do so poorly in my subject? Betty could have told me that she had her work cut out for her other credits. Jacob was hoping to cheat. He often gave students such a party, handed out assignments, and left the room. But it didn't work this time. What do you suggest we do? Betty stood signing that we were, after all, hard to sign, saying something like, "Hopefully next semester you will live up to my trust and get credit, not the exam. It's out there hesitating whether to give a 3 or a 4. Professors know a student's scholarship is hanging by a thread for the next 6 months. One word counts, and that's it. Prepare and come see me tomorrow," Jacob said. 7 o'clock. I'll write down the address. This was something Betty couldn't imagine. She just clapped her eyes shut. At recess, she couldn't stand it. Shared a student with me. Immediately learned a lot of racy details. It turns out, only from their course. Several girls have already been to Jacob credits and good grades on exams they received. Annotation that went as an appendix. No one complained. He's a real master. The girlfriend enlightened, almost out of envy. You'll like it too. Now Betty was sure that getting ready meant putting on nice lingerie. And things like that. She was going to the professor like a bride to a wedding. Even Auntie noticed you were on a date or something? She asked. Kind of vaguely answered Betty with a little lipstick. Look here, I won't let you drive anyone, Auntie warned. And then wished for details. Who's the boy? Where's he from? Is he from the city or from out of town? Whether it's serious, Betty said without giving it much thought. Her cheeks flushed. She spritzed herself once more with perfume and grabbed her purse. Late for the cab. She couldn't afford one, and it took 2 transfers to get to the professor's house. How many thoughts rattled around in her head as she hesitated to press the call button. When Jacob opened the door, she was unable from excitement to say even hello. To her amazement, his appearance was far from romantic. He didn't resemble a man about to flirt with a girl at all. He rubbed his face with his hands as he made his way into the living room. My big room was a mess right now. Lena looked as if the owner hadn't gotten her hands on it in a long time. Stacks of books everywhere, some papers, notes on the windowsill. The dust from the TV smelled like a cat. Betty turned up her nose. She wasn't wrong. Her aunt's cat litter box smells just like it. And the creep saw that there was a newspaper with a program on the TV. Used it for its intended purpose. Jacob shared. He slipped Betty a sheet of printed questions. Answer these 2. You'll get credit. While you're studying, call me. Then Betty stayed in the room greedily perplexed and confused. After a few minutes, she recovered enough to think about the assignment. She began scribbling answers on papers. There was no one in the way of cheating. Finishing, Betty waited for a while. The professor wasn't coming. She tried clicking him, but it came out softly, and he probably didn't hear. So she got up and wandered around the house, hoping to find him. He slept in the small room on the couch with a book. He must have thought he'd dozed off for a few minutes, but he fell soundly asleep. The book had fallen on his chest. Jacob himself reminded Betty of a not young boy and began to feel sorry for him. Betty never thought she could pity a man who stood far above her. With the social ladder in mind, one could wake him up or wait for him to wake up on his own. Or leave the note sheets by the couch and walk away, then get credit on Monday. Betty did neither one, the other, or the third. She went to the bathroom, found a mop bucket and a rag, and started cleaning. She moved quietly. Jacob woke up when it was already dark. He'd forgotten about Betty and her test. It was very rare for him to fall asleep in the middle of the day. And now he woke up with a clear, good head. He was glad of that. Now it was possible to dwell on his work until deep into the night. He was writing a book, but he often lacked either the time or the energy to finish the next chapter. The light was on in the kitchen. Betty Bread ate, drank tea, and read her textbook. And for the first time she was interested. Every word seemed significant, and it felt Betty. Remarkably calm now, as if she were truly at home in this large professor's apartment. Tidied up by her hands, she looked up. Standing in the doorway was Jacob. I guess I should have embarrassed and started making excuses. Like, "I'm sorry, I've been running the place without you." But instead, Betty asked if you wanted dinner. "Yes, Jacob," and it came gradually. The kitchen no longer resembled a warehouse of dirty dishes. The smell of home-cooked food smelled like that of a neighbor who cooked much tastier than Mom and fed Jacob when he was little. "I stewed zucchini." "Do you have a cottage?" Betty asked. He shifted his eyebrows and thought. "Some acquaintances brought them. They're obsessed with their dacha." When he had eaten but washed his tea, "Give me the credit," he said discreetly, changing to you. "You have a long way to go home." Betty took the credit as a matter of course. Nodding, she tucked the blue book into her bag. "I was gonna clean the windows tomorrow. What time will you be home?" "Look, I didn't mean to imply that you do the dirty work. You know, messing around in the mud. It's already clean." Betty's not worried at all for some reason. "By the window, but where do you live?" Asked, she named the most remote neighborhood in the city. "Not so long ago, it was considered a village in itself. Where are you going now?" "Stay here. I'll get you some bedding. You can sleep in the big room on the couch." I'll worry about Betty dropping her chin. "Did you get home safely or not?" "I'm the reason you're late." Betty thought she should call her aunt and warn her. Her aunt's house seemed far away now, as if from another life. She texted her aunt to stay at a friend's house. It's okay. Betty couldn't sleep for a long time. The couch was soft, but it was narrow. And every hour and every half hour the antique clock chimes. So Betty knows for sure it's 3:00 a.m. and she's still awake. She managed to doze off before dawn, but not for long at all. Nevertheless, she jumped up first. "I was drinking my second cup of coffee by the time the owner woke up." Saturday afternoon slipped by. Betty was washing the windows and making lunch. Jacob hadn't gone anywhere. He worked in his office. And when there was a break, he and Betty chatted. Betty talked and he listened. That's how I found out how she lived with her mom in her small town, and now with her aunt-uncle, and how she wished her college years would just slip by so she could go home. "Are you really going to school?" Jacob wondered. "Of course, Betty." Raz splashed the ox on the glass in a special liquid and took a rag. "I have my favorite teacher there. She's retired now. She's got a workload. You know what it is? 40 odd is more than 2 jobs. It's very hard. Nobody's going to school. I'll be there and Wendy will feel better." And Betty made a soup that made her dizzy even from the smell. After they ate, the girl put the pots in the fridge. "I think you'll have enough for 3 days. And then that he looked at her questioningly in front of Varia, that she wiped her wet hands and began to pack. Auntie, there was already worried, probably left alone Jacob. He thought about it. Never before had the idea of having a housekeeper crossed his mind. Yes, he often had women over and stayed overnight. But he'd never thought of an au pair. Usually strangers in the apartment annoyed him, but Betty did not. She was easy to talk to and even silent. She didn't need to be impressed. The girl lives poorly. Rada will probably have a part-time job. Why not? Her peers work part-time in cafes and pizzerias as waiters. Hand out advertising leaflets on the streets, and some even work at a gas station. Worse yet, homework is on fire. She'll be excited about the opportunity. And the next time the girl came to him, he said bluntly, "If you a couple times a week to clean up, I can pay you so much. How's that?" Betty turned pale, then blushed, and then quietly said okay. She came to work neatly, like clockwork. Soon there wasn't a corner of the apartment that hadn't been touched by her caring hands. She was sorting out closets, organizing his closet. God, he didn't realize he had so many shirts and sweaters and vests. All of it lurking in the depths of the chief veneer. And he wore what hung closest. Now his refrigerator was never empty. Returning home, he was pleased to think of the deliciousness that awaited him. Already a month later, his mother, whom he visited, squinting, diagnosed him. "You found yourself a good woman, a servant," he explained with a smile. "Pay her well and leave her alone. You should dust her. You look like a different person." Jacob, so in his mind, treated Betty better than well. He gave her the keys to the apartment and had a special card that held money for the household. He let Betty spend it however she wanted and never asked for an accounting. And punished Betty's supreme trust. He remained his own man in front of her. He could doze off, he could work, he could be silent or start sharing thoughts that came into his head. But he was completely incapable of seeing Betty as a woman. He could say to her, "Betty, can't you make a snack tomorrow? Buy a nice wine. I have a friend coming over." He didn't notice how the girl's expression changed, how she bit her lip. Betty nodded silently and disappeared into the kitchen. The aunt didn't know her niece worked part-time. She thought she had a busy college life, sitting in the library, running to the movies to hang out with her friends, or partying at dances. But too tired, silent girl returned home. Now she did not wait for her aunt to call her for a drink. She often offered to sit down herself, and when her aunt poured her a second and then a third glass, she didn't refuse. They say that love changes a man for the better. At any rate, his eyes began to burn. Betty's eyes became tense and anxious, like she'd been waiting for something all along, and she didn't see her friends at all. Not even Kate, whom she loved very much. There was no time to drop in. Christmas was approaching. Betty knew her mom was waiting for her, counting the days until the winter session was over. But Betty invariably managed to make it out for the holiday itself. She and her mom never went anywhere. Like most people thought Christmas was a family affair, and there was never a penny to spare. They set the table for two. Mom cooked a specialty dinner that smelled good. It made the whole neighborhood drool. We celebrated Christmas, local time. We went to bed almost as soon as the concert started. Woke up late. We ate out of the fridge, just like everybody else, and we were sure to shout out money to each other for presents. Betty managed to save up for her mom's gold ring last year. It seemed easy to do without jewelry, but her mother had been used to denying herself everything all her life, and her daughter wanted to pamper her. So Mom bought Betty a set of cosmetics. She looked at it, leafing through the catalog, but she couldn't even think of spending such a sum. This year, too, Betty was going to be going home at least the morning of December 31. Jacob would probably not want to settle for hawkers for the holiday. Obviously, he had restaurants or some new girl planned for the holiday. Betty, not to suffer. It's best not to see it. But just before New Year's Eve, the professor got sick. Usually the flu would hit their town in February and recede in March with the cold. But there was no doubt about it. Jacob had caught the flu. High fever, bone-chunky sore eyes. "Classic picture, sure you better not come to me," said the professor on the phone to his assistant. "Who's after you? What about you alone?" The girl was confused. Still wasn't going to go anywhere. Perhaps he was lying. But Betty imagined the picture of a sick man, who no one needs in the literal sense of the word. No one to pour water for him or call an ambulance if he needed it. All his girlfriends had scattered, of course. She sat her lip down. That same day, she called home. "Mom, I can't make it. Don't worry about it, but it just happened. We have an exam on the 27th. So, counseling. The girls and I'll study together." "Yeah, well, I can't get away." "You should go to your neighbor's. She'll be glad." The lonely old neighbor also spent Christmas alone with the TV. They'll both have more fun with their mom. On December 24, Betty was unlocking the door with her key, as if nothing had happened. Jacob was lying on the couch, covered with a blanket. There was a glass of tea on the nightstand next to him. The professor looked most unhappy. At the same time, he was very surprised to see her. "But I told you to put it in the corridor and go away. I'm very grateful to you, but I don't want you to get sick." "I won't get sick," said Betty firmly, though she didn't feel any confidence. "I'm inoculated. I'll get you all cleaned up and we'll have a party. I forgot to ask, Christmas tree. Do you have at least a small, artificial one in the household?" "I haven't put one up for a long time. It's only when there are children in the family." "I understand." Betty put her hand on the professor's forehead when the temperature was last measured. "An hour ago. So now I feed you a little. Then we drink a fever reducer. Then you sleep while I clean up the place." Jacob felt so weak. He wanted to obey that, sure to him young voice. He was happy to let Betty take control. By evening, the apartment shone with cleanliness. There was a live Christmas tree in the great room. There weren't many toys, but the lights from the garland created a kind of magical ambience. Betty was in the kitchen, and Jacob, who was feeling a little better, was sitting covered with pillows. He was watching a comedy, eating a red fish sandwich and drinking cranberry Mars. He thought, and that in his time even his mother did not care about him so much, and the holiday was not celebrated honorably. At exactly midnight, the champagne glasses were raised. Everything that Betty had prepared seemed unusually delicious to the professor. The girl didn't let him sit for long. She made sure Jacob drank the medicine, turned out the lights. Only the lights on the Christmas tree remained, and the professor fell asleep so soundly that he was not disturbed even by fireworks and firecrackers under the window. Laughter and shouts of drunken companies that gathered in the yard. Jacob woke up at dawn. It was already quiet outside the window. Even the most stalwart had gone home, and he was as wet as a mouse. He didn't call Betty, but she heard him stirring somehow. She came and helped him to change into dry clothes, brought him a drink, and he went back to sleep in the sound sleep of a man on the mend. Betty was in vain, assuring me that she would never fall ill. The flu had caught up with her, and now it was the professor's turn to take care of his assistant. He's not letting her go anywhere. You want to infect your mom or your aunt? Stay here. I can't get infected. I'm immune. I'll call a doctor and we'll be back on our feet in no time. They ended up spending New Year's Eve together. Jacob helped Betty study for her exams. All moral barriers melted away during that time, and the girl had never felt so happy. The professor, when he saw the gift to the girl, it was a book he wanted to have, but the price made him wave away the purchase. Betty, did you get the inheritance? Saying that, he realized that the joke wasn't quite right. The girl only had her mom, and losing her would be a tragedy for Betty. Well, I was going to say, did you rob a bank just to save up? Betty jerked his shoulder, showing that the problem wasn't worth the attention. Of the money I gave you, you didn't spend any of it on yourself. I couldn't take money from myself to look after you for a fee. She stabbed his shoulder and he hugged her gently. Betty only came home for the last few days of the vacation. She could see that her mother missed her very much and was sad that she would have to be separated again soon. But looking at her daughter closely, she said, "I've never seen you so happy. God willing." Apparently, Mommy was on to something. Aunt Betty said she would be staying with a friend from the new semester. The old woman was pleased. That's right. You'll be better off with a friend, going to classes, dancing, and talking together. And it's a long way from my university to yours. Good for you for making that decision. The only person Betty told the whole truth about the blockade. The girl herself couldn't give herself a reason why she decided to open up to her. Kate was not just calm, serious. There was a kind of inner strength in her. Betty had never heard her friend lose her temper, become indignant. Betty explained the mutilation. Kate had been through too much. Right now, Kate only said you didn't ask what his plans were. No, Betty answered. How can I influence anything? Who am I around him? The corner of Kate's mouth twitched a little. But Betty knew her friend too well to see it as mockery. I think he wants us to go away together this summer. Betty remembered. He said he never vacationed in Russia. He said I should get a passport too. He talked me into leaving uni. What did Betty think she was listening to? I know the story from my father, but I gave my word not to discuss it with anyone. I'm sorry, I can't even tell you. But Kate, please, please, Betty begged. You realize no one cares as much as I do, but I promised. All I can say is if you tell Jacob to go somewhere by the sea where archaeologists are digging, he'll be much happier than he is now. It's like her idea convinced him it wasn't too late. But Betty let her friend's words pass her ears. Kate obviously doesn't get it. Jacob has everything here, an apartment, a job, status, students, an elderly mom who is unlikely to be able to move. In short, the tree has grown all its roots into the soil here. How could it be uprooted in February when spring was in the air and the days were getting longer? Betty realized she was pregnant. Later, she didn't know why she decided to hide it for a while. The fact that she was going to have a child was a joy to her. Everything was going to be okay now. Jacob said himself that his life had begun to change. When Betty came in to sign or not, it didn't matter. But no one had ever given Jacob a gift like she would. She decided to confess to him on his birthday. The pregnancy had been very easy for her. There was no nausea or dizziness. More often than usual, she wanted to sleep, and the smell of peppermint was maddeningly annoying. That's all, and she looked better. Her face, on which she had previously had to put so much abnormal cream, became clean and smooth. She put on a little weight. Her look became calm and confident. Thanks to Jacob, she was now well dressed and had been out and about more than once. Betty was catching interested glances from men. At the university, she didn't tell anyone about her affair. If the girls noticed that she was no longer rushing to the bus stop to go to her aunt's house in a distant neighborhood, Betty said that she was now living in an apartment. Nevertheless, the affair was soon made known on the course. But Betty behaved in such a way that she was not allowed to ask questions, and gradually the fellow students backed off. No one took Betty's relationship with Jacob as anything serious. Once it became known that Betty was invited to the professor as a cleaner, and the girls concluded that the professor had successfully arranged a free servant, plus intimate services. Very convenient. But of course, none of this would last long. Too plain and unassuming. Betty for a man like Jacob. If he ever marries, then certainly not to such and classmates. Talking to Betty, pretended not to know anything. Yes, the anniversary was far away, but Jacob could not make his birthday go unnoticed. It was customary to bring champagne and hors d'oeuvres to the university department, to treat colleagues, to accept congratulations. And the professor kept the most expensive wine in his office in case of important guests. The rector also stopped by on this day, but it wasn't worth spending a collector's French wine on David. He did not know anything about drinks and preferred a shot of white wine, and occasionally on special occasions. Actually, his doctors had forbidden it, a stomach ulcer. Alcohol was to be avoided. At home, Jacob told Betty, "I didn't want you to bother. Let's go to the restaurant. Everyone will see us." Betty waited for Jacob to say, "So what? Let them look and be jealous." But he reassured her with the wrong words. "It's a small restaurant, very quiet. We'll rent an office. I'm sure no one will notice." Betty put on a new dress, blue, velvet. I guess her fellow students aren't adorable. They'd share one of these. They'd say it was old-fashioned. But Betty wasn't much of a fashionista, even though she now had the opportunity to dress well. She found the dress very pretty, and the pearl earrings she'd chosen for the day were nice too. Before leaving them alone, the waiter lit a candle on the table. Jacob had placed the order himself. He knew Betty wasn't versed in fine cuisine, and the names of the dishes didn't mean anything to her, but he decided to treat a Cinderella. "You're probably wondering why I didn't get you anything?" said Betty, and looking at Jacob with loving eyes. "Yes, I have everything in the world. I don't want you to cut yourself any slack." "Well, let's just say it's not everything in the world. Anyway, I wanted to tell you." She winced for a few seconds, and then he got her news, hung up the silence. And the longer it dragged on, the more Betty seemed to think that something was going wrong in a very different way than she had imagined. Betty softly began Jacob. "What do I want you to do now so you don't think I'm a sneak? Think about it. Let's take this easier. You and I will go, you'll be looked at. I'll pay for everything, and the problem will be solved." He didn't say that dreaded word he wanted to throw words at him, assuring him that it would be painless, comfortable, safe, that everything would soon be forgotten. "Good?" he asked with a soft smile, stroking his hand. "Good." She didn't hear her voice. "You realize you have to finish your studies, and I don't need and never have needed babies. Of course it's my fault. I realize that. I'm not denying it. You're too young and inexperienced. So let me atone for it by promising you won't experience anything less than the dentist's office." "You're right, Betty." "Good," she whispered. A quarter of an hour later, she said, excusing herself to go to the bathroom. Near the front door she turned, ran sharply out of the restaurant, stopped the first car she could find, and gave the address to her aunt. When she showed up at her relative's house, frozen tooth on tooth, with eyes like she had just buried her closest loved one, the aunt froze. Please pour me your Limonov liquor. If you don't have vodka," said Betty. "I've collapsed the university," said Betty to her friend. She and Kate sat in the garden on the glass loggia. Kate had grown all sorts of things. It was warm and had 2 cozy chairs. This was where Kate liked to work, sitting under the roofing and green leaves. "What do you mean you're leaving?" Kate asked, and in her voice Betty heard a metal that she had never felt before. "But I can't see him every day, and I have to go. He can't leave a job that's so lucrative. He's the king of God at uni. The students look at his mouth." "Exactly. He's not going to go away," Kate said. "And you've got nothing under your belt. If you drop out, you'll have to go home. You don't have a university there, you'll be without a full education. I won't have time to study now, where and with a baby allowed in the dormitory. I think the 2nd floor is for families. Now they'll give you a room. Do you know how they live there? Our dorm is in the private sector. There's no mains. Only boiling water comes out of the tap. Can you imagine? Somebody has no hot water, and the dorm has no cold water. The girls are washing diapers, and my hands are red as beads. And to go to uni, everyone knows and whispers. And I hear that whispering behind my back all the time. And I don't think Jacob's gonna let me compromise him like this. If I don't get an abortion, he'll get me out of the university." Kate sat in silence, thinking about something. "I want to talk to him," she said finally. "What in God's name are you talking about?" Betty opened her eyes. "Are you threatening to have your dad ruin Jacob's career? If you won't marry me, please don't. I wouldn't marry him at all now, even if he proposed. After he sent me away. He's got a dad of his own, I'll leave him out of it. He's not of this world at all." Kate grinned slightly and gave Betty a very grown-up look. "He'll pay off the necessary equipment for the lab, but he'll forget that there's no cold water in the dormitory. Can you believe it, Betty, he eats pumpkin. He loves pumpkin more than anything else in the world and asks his mom to make it every day. He doesn't need no spread. And his favorite shirt has been changed for the 3rd decade. He's used to nothing else. You shouldn't let Daddy be involved in any of your worldly matters. It's ridiculous. Don't worry, Betty. I won't intimidate your Jacob, and I won't ask him for anything. I'm just going to tell my story." "What story haven't you told me?" "No, I haven't. I gave my mom my word that no one would ever find out. And you know I keep my word. But now please give me your Jacob's cell phone number." Maria, Kate's mother, was from Canada. It was a very quiet corner with only one convenience store. We took the bus to the center twice a week. The young people from here invariably left when they finished school. It was a good thing Maria's family had many children. Brothers and sisters made up for the lack of friends. There was someone to play with, to wander in the forest. Maria's parents sadly realized that it was not their chicks who would fly out of the nest, although they themselves were not going to move to the city, and hoped that at least one of the children would stay to brighten their old age. Maria was 16 years old when Kevin, a new man, arrived in the village. But Kevin would have attracted attention in any society. He was a little over 30 at the time. Until recently, he'd been working as a geologist, but then something had gone to his head. As Maria's mother indelicately put it, and he wished to live in the arms of nature, to hunt, to plant a vegetable garden. He wished to eat what he had grown and to drink key water, to be surrounded by forest, birds, animals, and no people. He came to the village to find such a place in the vicinity and settle there. He seemed to be a healthy man, his mother said, as he had to work and work and work. But what's he up to? He's healthy, but his head must be sick. Nevertheless, when Kevin paid those people who knew the area well, they pointed him to a hunting hut far away in the woods. It had been abandoned for the last few years, only occasionally occupied by those who went out with a gun for trophies and came back. Kevin came to like it. The place suited him completely. Absolute silence. A small creek in the neighborhood. The cabin had a stove and the essentials of a table. A few benches. "I'm ready to buy this house," he said, only to be laughed at. Who would sell that hut? No one lives there. She settles in by accident. No one will kick her out. Maria knew the place well. There was a time when she and the boys used to play there. It's funny because they have their own house there. But it was always summer, and they'd linger in the hut. Well, if it was just for a few hours. And in the evening they were expected, the house surrounded. But the girl could not imagine that it was possible to stay in this wilderness for the winter. "It's freezing out here. The snow falls over my head. If anything happens, I'll try to get to people." She had no idea that her opinion would soon change. There were no guys her age or older in the village. Who could she set her eyes on? Kevin was the first to take notice. And soon the girl fell madly in love with him. At first it seemed innocent enough. Maria helped Georgie to get used to the local area, showed him plants, taught him what was poisonous, what was edible, where it was better to pick mushrooms, where hunting was good, and where it was useless to wait for the beast. She carried him from home milk and bread, bought at his request in the village store needles, threads, and all sorts of small things, and did not notice how the time came when she could not live without Kevin. When Maria told her parents that she was moving into the hut, they were stunned. Then the mother began to live as a schoolgirl's father, and the father threatened to shoot his daughter's chosen one with a hunting rifle. But the girl at that time felt happy and said Alyosha still will not hold on. "I'll run away to him. If he lets me go in good faith, I'll visit you, but not. So let's say goodbye for good." Her parents knew Maria's stubborn, unyielding character and realized she would still do her own thing. The next day, the daughter packed her things in a backpack and left, humming her new life. But soon she regretted what she had done. Her parents didn't recognize it. Maria had always been secretive, shared only about the good things, and all the difficulties and sorrows experienced alone. At first, everything went well in the new place. Maybe if the girl had lived in the city before, she would immediately feel the change and be disappointed. For Maria, there was the usual housework. She knew how to cook, sew, do laundry in her snug hut brought coziness. Once a month together with her husband, she came to the village, visited her parents, brought them forest guests. Usually it was Siberian berries or fresh fish. Maria washed in the bathhouse, and no wonder, and the village councils. And the next day she would go back to her forest hut with Kevin. And then winter came. This year it was particularly harsh. It was impossible to walk to the village. There was too much snow, and the young woman spent her days in the small hunting lodge. The stove had to be stoked often. The cabin put out in a flash from all the entertainment, a few books in the counted already 100 times. Maria couldn't wait for it to get warmer, for the forest trails to dry, and for her to be able to visit her own. When she finally reached the village, she learned the bitter news. Her father had died at the beginning of winter, and her mother had fallen ill. Maybe it was because she had lost the man she had lived with all her life. Maybe because she was worried about the fate of her youngest daughter, one way or another. She could not be without medical care, and the older children took her to their home in the city. The native house met Maria, boarded up windows. That same year, Maria became pregnant. Then she for the first time stammered that probably for the first time she should move closer to people, return to the village, get on the register, so that help would be nearby, if anything. And when the child was born, until it grew up a little, you can't keep it in the middle of nowhere. But Kevin dismissed all her plans. He began to assure Maria that she had to rely on nature. Childbirth is a natural process, and everything will be fine. And never a city wife's child will grow up so strong and healthy, as their son will grow up here in the fresh air and healthy food. There was some doubt in Maria's soul. She would feel more comfortable if she could get to a doctor in case of need. But Kevin never tired of assuring her that she was a young, strong girl and everything would go well. Maria only managed to take one promise from him. The baby must be born in a maternity hospital. My mother told me that one time she almost died when my brother Liam was born. It's times like this when you need doctors to be there for you. Kevin promised. However, when it was time to get out of the wilderness, it proved impossible. It was raining very hard. There was nothing to think about to get to the hospital in advance. Maria was worried. Kevin again assured her that everything would be just right, and even though the young woman had to suffer a lot, a strong, healthy boy was born. Maria tried to persuade her husband to make contact with the big land. She would be calmer if the doctor examined the child and said that he was all right, but Kevin refused flatly. Now, in his opinion, the young mother just needed to recuperate. Kevin himself cooked food, fed Maria, was caringly gentle, and she for a while resigned herself to the state of affairs. Now, even in winter, Maria had no time to be bored. Wherever her husband went, she was never alone. The child was with her. The mother was worried that the baby might catch cold. She often stoked the stove, and still the hut was colder than usual. In the winter months, it used to be in her home. But little Vanya did not fall ill. Trouble came in the spring, when the sun had already warmed up, and mother and child spent a lot of time in the fresh air. The baby was crawling on the grass. He picked up a tick, but when the kid got sick, his parents couldn't help him. The boy died of encephalitis. It was the hardest time of Maria's life. She hated herself for not insisting. She had to move with her son at least for a while to the empty parents' house. Kevin took his son's death much more calmly. That's the way it is in nature, he said, natural selection. Only the strongest survive. Encephalitis cures itself without medication. If Jack wasn't meant to be, that was his fate. A cemetery funeral was also out of the question, according to Kevin. You and I know how it happened, but strangers might not believe it. And in any case, they'll blame us for everything. They'll say we shouldn't have raised the child in the woods, that we killed him. Didn't we? Maria looked up with tears in her eyes. No one can forbid us to live the way we think is right. Kevin spoke firmly. Everything will work out for us. You'll see. Maybe if Maria had her father and mother waiting for her, she would have packed up and gone to them. But the people closest to her already lived far away from here. And Kevin constantly insinuated Maria that she had no one but him, that only he needed her. And the young woman agreed to stay. A year and a half later, by the time the girl Maria was born, it was already hard to recognize. Quite young, she looked almost twice her age. Her hands had been chopped off by hard work. Hope long ago disappeared cheerful and sly expression, which before was characteristic of her. It felt so much like her, and it didn't matter that when Kevin went to the village to buy some clothes and groceries, she just waved her hand. Go buy what you want yourself. What if you don't guess the size? I don't care what you bring, I'll wear it. She really became completely indifferent to her appearance, and maybe to her fate. She wasn't expecting anything anymore. Yesterday was like today. So monotonously passed a month, 2 months. Meanwhile, the second labor was easier, and the woman in labor was quicker on her feet. The baby she now had was not coming down from her arms. Kevin had hoped for a second time that there would be a son, and when he became the father of a daughter, declared that he would raise her as a boy. Maybe some higher power took pity on the girl and her mother. It is not known whether Maria would have been able to bear the loss of a second child or not. Kevin's assurances that nature does everything right, performing natural selection, reassured her not too much. Little Kate's childhood was not easy. No toys to amuse her peers, no special food choices, no cartoons. The simplest food her father had gotten, and the simplest clothes her mother sewed and gave her a single doll, also handmade. Of course, childhood finds its joys everywhere, and Kate enjoyed fiddling with the horns, spending whole days in the woods and learning the lessons her father had taught her. By the time the children were ready to go to school, Kate could read and count to 100, and she could survive a few days in the taiga even if there were no adults around. But in winter it was hard. It was literally cold, hungry, and lonely. You could not go anywhere from home, especially in the cold. The older Kate got, the more she realized, the more often she noticed that her mother was trying to change her life. All for her sake. A daughter needs to study, she told her father. Come on, you'll get there. You really need to. We'll teach her ourselves. But these schools are full of vices. Children learn one from another, and by the time they graduate, they drink, smoke, and cohabit with each other. I didn't drink or smoke. Mom objected. You're just lucky you didn't get spoiled. And Kate, who's going to get led astray. Sooner or later people will come here. The mother would come in from the other end, and it would be known that the child was sitting at home and not going to school. Will be taken away. Kate will be deprived of parental rights. If you go back and forth to the village, that's how it'll be. You'll complain about life there. Write that your husband abuses you, keeps you in brutal conditions. Then you'll lose your daughter for sure. And if you don't bother people, no one will interfere in our lives. The gypsies live as they want. No one touches them. But we started with Mom, and we're hermits. It's our choice. Her father cut her off. It may be your choice, but it's not ours. Once dared Mom to say, I wouldn't dream of cleaning pots with river sand and wearing Latin. Paid skirt, you don't like it? Her father looked at her intently. Go back to your village, and I'll take Kate and go with her where you won't find us. Not me, not her mom. Kate realized that parting them from each other would be the hardest thing in the world. There was no telling how or when their fate would have changed. But misfortune helped. Her father started taking lion hunting, and at an unfortunate hour, they encountered a bear. And if Mom hadn't rushed out to find them, Kate would have died. That's when her leg was mangled. How her mother dragged her daughter to the village before people Kate does not remember. Her mother told me that she carried her in her arms, that she had made some branches and held on through the roadless area. Lucky she didn't get lost. Only one thing Kate's mom kept saying, don't tell anyone about Dad. Don't talk about Dad to Mom. He'll die out there. He's all alone. Don't tell. Mom kept telling her daughters. It seemed that at these moments she was out of her mind. Father is lying there alone in the taiga, and there's no help for him. Mother must have realized that if he stayed alive, he would never give them peace. So she chose such a cruel way to be free, since fate provided the clue. Kate didn't really care about much else. She was in too much pain, too much blood loss. She was in for heavy treatment, several surgeries. But the doctors said that she would have to walk with a crutch, or at best, with a stick. At the hospital, Kate was looked at as a wonder, as some kind of female Mowgli, and everything around her was so unfamiliar and alien to her, as if she were on another planet. But soon Kate at the treatment center was loved. She never complained, never got cranky. She behaved with rare courage and unobtrusiveness. Mom told me afterward, she was dealt with. Kate really could have been taken away from her. But Mom somehow managed to convey that together with her daughter became a victim of circumstances, that her husband did not let her and her daughter go to people, or she would have long ago returned to her native home. They were not separated. The mother confessed that her husband had stayed in the taiga. She managed to get her daughter out, but not her husband. But she said that she could not specify the exact place. Of course, a search was organized. Kate understood the mother hoped that while the father was being searched, he would die and the mother would not be considered guilty. After all, the bear had done it. A tragic accident and nothing more. However, the search parties found neither the father nor his body. And for a long time it was terribly disturbing. Kate's mother was discharged, and she and my mother actually settled in my ancestral home. Both of them after Taiga Hut. Such a life seemed luxurious in the house, 2 rooms, kitchen, bath, and another kitchen. Summer its own garden with apple trees and plums. Maria was pitied. We helped to organize gas, shared things. And at first, they took out food. Then Maria found a job in the village, opened something like a small canteen. And Kate started to study. She didn't go to school, but a teacher went to her and tutored her individually. She said Kate was barely behind her peers. As sharp as she is, of course, she catches up with them quickly. Maria was worried that Kevin would show up sooner or later. She believed he was capable of anything. The worst thing for her was if he took her daughter away with him. She's a mother, she won't have time to call for help, and she'll lose the girl forever. And then archaeologists came to the village. There was a nearby lake, about which legends were made, as if at the bottom of it lies a flooded city and amazing riches. Of course, at all times there were hunters, and they were recruited. They tried to find something without finding anything. But David, who led the expedition, immediately said that he was not going to look for anything underwater. All these are just beautiful fairy tales that have been handed down from generation to generation. But the satellite map is a different matter. It shows that not far from here in the swamp area, there are the remains of an ancient settlement. That's where we should excavate. The archaeologists brought food with them. But when they had an opportunity, they ate not food cooked on the fire, but went to the canteen. They told about Maria, about her unusual fate. And she paid attention to the young woman, began to ask about her life in the taiga. And there he and Maria did not notice how they became attached to each other. David knew that Maria was afraid for the child, but she had nowhere to go. She had no contact with her family, and he offered the woman to go to the city with him. She refused flatly at first. Do you need someone like me? You'll have me playing the fool all my life. What have I learned in life? And I have nothing. We're dragging from one paycheck to the next. I only have a daughter, and this is someone else's child for you. How can you love her? Listen to me, silly you say, so she'll be with you. They often call me blessed too. I go to work at home, lock the door. If I forget, they'll mix up the salt and sugar. It's impossible to eat lunch afterwards. I even put my shoes on the wrong foot when I was thinking, and then wondered why it was so uncomfortable for me to walk. So I don't know whether such an uncomfortable husband will suit me or not. And as for Kate, where are you going to treat the girl here? She needs neurosurgery. I can show her to some very good doctors. Maybe they can help. Kate will get a good education and never return to the Taiga. It was probably with this kind of talk that David broke Maria's resistance. She realized that she would have to trust this man completely and, moreover, entrust her daughter's life to him. But he'll get her out of here and never have to fear for Kate. She didn't know why, but she felt surprisingly calm around the absent-minded scientist. But when her mother told Kate that they would be leaving soon, the girl felt real grief. She made friends with the neighboring family, and the older boy Liam became her loyal friend. At 10 years old, you can fall in love, you know, but how else? Kate, however, herself did not yet realize that she was in love, but to go away to distant lands and never see a bone again. It seemed worse than death to her. Will you write letters to each other? I persuaded my mother, who, as always, understood everything. David signed with Maria as soon as they came to town, and he'd arranged it so that Kate was considered his own daughter. Like he'd been visiting her mother for years, and now he's finally married. Kate was treated in good sanatoriums, taken abroad. A long time ago, no one could think that this girl was once considered Mowgli. Kate grew up to be very beautiful, except for her leg, which had not fully recovered. Some important nerve endings had been damaged. It would have been a beauty contest, if Kate had wanted it, of course. And if it hadn't occurred to her, and it never would have occurred to her. She still wrote letters to Kostya, who had graduated from the Forestry Technical School and was now in the army, and did not initiate her relatives into the details of this correspondence. Mom, of course, thought that it was the remnants of childhood friendship, which dragged on for years. Well, let her think so. Kate also didn't dream about her father very often. They were terrible dreams. She'd see him in the woods, lying dying in the snow, or she'd think he'd come and knock on the window, wanting to take her with him. She woke up to that knocking. Of course, Kate had girlfriends when she was in the sanatorium, but all those relationships ended when it was time to leave. But Betty, without realizing it, had become attached to her. Sometimes it seemed to her that when she was a child they had lived in the same village and had been firm friends. Only then they'd forgotten about it. And now what had happened to her friend, Kate took to heart. She couldn't let Jacob break the laces of life and everything like that. That things would go wrong for the girl, Kate had no doubt. Betty was broken. Kate wouldn't allow herself to break down like that even in her most difficult moments about Jacob. Kate had heard from her father. Her stepfather had been called Daddy for a long time now, and surprisingly absent-minded. David often felt sorry for his imposing, confident friend. Jacob should have had a different fate better. It was not uncommon for his father to say. His parents were forcing him to pursue a career, and he had resigned himself to it. It's hard when a man gives up what he has a calling for. Skate Jacob didn't see Jacob, and if it weren't for Betty, wouldn't have felt any interest in this person. Now that she had a piece of paper with his phone number in her hand, she sat for a while, wondering. What would she talk to him about? It would be ridiculous to convince him that Betty was a decent girl and he should marry her. It's a kindergarten, and nothing good will ever come out of the election, and Betty won't agree to it. Kate, lifted up with difficulty, went to the window and stood for a while, staring wildly out into the courtyard, and then returned to her favorite chair and picked up the phone. Jacob, her voice was not like her usual voice now. It sounded different. It's Kate. Do you remember David's daughter? Yes. Rector. Thank you. Nice to meet you too. I'd like to come to you. Yes, home, you heard right. It's not exactly easy for me to walk, but still. No, you're not coming to me, I'm coming to you. I know the address. Please name a time that is convenient for you. Kate felt her interlocutor's slight confusion, but she wasn't going to make it easy for him and reveal her cards right away. Having made an appointment, she ended the conversation. Jacob was really excited. Betty hadn't come to see him in days. He was no longer lecturing in her class. They had not been able to meet in the auditorium. On the contrary, at the university, she had resolutely avoided him, always in his company. He could not approach her. He felt uneasy. There was no telling what a girl could do. She should have agreed to his proposal. Soon she would have forgotten all about it. The old relationship between them could be preserved, at any rate until she finishes college, and their Betty herself will probably find a suitable groom for herself. She can't not realize there's such an age difference between them. He wasn't going to marry anyone. The second option would have been even better if Betty had disappeared from his life altogether. Both of them had made a mistake, and both of them would try to fix it, erase it from their minds. Each would start living their own lives. Worst of all, if a girl starts acting out on her own out of pride over some private citizen. God forbid something untoward happens. He'll be at fault if she decides to have this child, file for child support. Now, that's just not good enough. So everyone knows he's got a son or daughter growing on the side. Betty will start blackmailing him with the baby. There will be no end to her requests. Jacob knew the chancellor had a daughter, and there was talk of her having some kind of health problem. But what did the girl look like? He couldn't even vaguely remember. She wasn't in his department, and she was a part-time student. Why would she need him? And nothing occurred to him. Couldn't the rector, through his daughter, have asked him to write a letter of resignation? David had never acted that way. Maybe there's a guy in this girl who failed a session and she wants to ask for him. What if she heard from the other students about his former habits, and the girls were willing to pay for an A? He saw her on the intercom. A short, dark-haired girl. Kate, asked the girl, nodded. He opened the front door. He met Kate by the elevator. He had never paid such respect to any of the female students, but still the only daughter of the rector. Jacob is used to being able to charm girls literally from the first words, and now, as they call it, turned on the charm. However, looking closely at Kate, he began to get confused in words. The girl was amazingly beautiful, truly a gift of nature. She did not need to paint her face, resort to the tricks of cosmetics. But Kate acted as if she were the same age as Jacob, an adult without any embarrassment. He sensed her inner calm. He invited her into the living room, offered her tea or coffee. "Sit down," Kate asked, and when he sank down beside her on the edge of the couch, she said bluntly, "I want to talk to you about Betty." That's it. The last thing Jacob realized was that Betty was clearly a former outsider, could be friends with the chancellor's daughter. Was it as sneaky as he'd never suspected? And what was it? He asked, to give Kate a chance to reveal her cards first. Does she know much she wants to achieve money or for him to marry Betty? "I'm taking responsibility for this child," Kate said. There's no way he expected that. Such direct words, and that she would say exactly that. Damn it, how good was she? And he's a sophisticated man, couldn't take his eyes off Kate. "What do you mean?" Those words came easy to me. My mind was racing. Jacob tried to concentrate. "I'm going to make sure that Betty does well. I'm asking you to stay out of it. You've already made it clear you won't marry her. And I'd talk her out of it, to be honest. It wouldn't work if you forced yourself to do it. She'd have spent her life trying to make you happy. And she'd have ruined her own. That's it now. I mean it, don't touch her again. I'm taking over." Kate got up almost easily. Jacob wanted to help her walk to the door, but she made a dismissing gesture with her hand, saying, "I can do without your help." He only had to stand in the hallway and watch as the door slammed shut behind her. Later that afternoon, Kate had a long conversation with Betty. "Here's what we're going to do. You're moving in with us now. I don't mind. You'll find a spare room and your parents won't say a word against it," she said. "The first thing we have to do is to get you through university. Not to live without your aunt, not to travel every day across the city in a packed bus. We'll prepare for the spring session together. My dad and mom will be happy that I have a friend now. You'll go to your mom's for the vacations. Of course, she will have to go through all this, but still she will accept it in the fall, who gave birth to more than half a year to an academic. Don't take it, you'll be back by the winter session. Nothing, Mo manage. Kate was right. They did manage to get over the hurdle together. But it was because Betty accepted her position that she was not alone. In the evenings, the two of them would sit and talk about everything. As the warm spring twilight descended upon the land, they drank apple juice and made plans. It was here in this house that it was easiest to study. Maybe it was the example of Kate, who herself sat a lot at textbooks. Betty went home after she had passed her classes with honors. Of course, the first days were not easy for her. Both her mother cried and she herself cried. But to Betty's surprise, her mom was the first to pull herself together and started preparing the baby dowry. At the end of September, baby girl Clara was born, and Kate became her red. Kate knew her friend would be back in a few months, but she still missed her. True, she had to worry these days. Maria was facing a complicated diagnosis because of her mom. She told herself about it. My Dr. Daniel's eyebrows are coming together. I hate the ultrasound machine black and white breaks on the screen always hiding something you didn't realize was there. Take a look at this. This is what I do not like, said Denis Vasilievich in the chest at 10 o'clock tumor, and not all of its features correspond qualitatively. He tries to explain understandable kindly, as it is supposed to the doctor of the paid office. She talks about fuzzy borders and blood flow. Later he leaves the terms and exclaims, looking at my faces no longer professionally, but sincerely. Well, don't bury yourself before your time and add quietly. On Monday you will come to the oncology. You need to take a pension. It will be made urgently. I go out. I remember in the lobby young administrator describing the account of women waiting in line warm evening behind the open door, the wind plowing in my face. But the whole thing was unreal. It was like through absorbent cotton, and the hand felt like it wasn't my own. I took my cell phone out of my bag. I couldn't call my mom or my sister. I could only call our family doctor, Martin. It was the only thing now, not even a rope, a thread, a salvation. What if there was more to it? Martin, as a musician, has an absolute ear for illness, and they live. My mind was jumbled. I paused, remembering how the words I needed to say sounded. I'm going into surgery. You're going to tell me the truth. How serious is it? A friend of mine used to say when someone got really sick, when you're in trouble like this, you knock on every door and other people will tell you. I got the same disease. I'm the one and only. There's no need to be shy. And they start knocking on your mother's door. The door never closes. He always stands on the threshold, with his back turned to his own life, and sees and treats only those who knock. And now, as busy as he is, Martin doesn't say no. He's just leaving for surgery, and he'll call when it's done and call to see him. There was still life to be lived. The journey home is 2 hours long with a layover. An evening where I sit with the phone on my lap, and what's on the ringer? The journey to the hospital in the late twilight. I realize it's a shame to be so afraid for myself, to walk away from serious illnesses. Children. Fate is ruthless to the unrepeatable. When she was lying in the ward in full consciousness and talking to her mother, the doctor came in and said, "How much can you waste medication? She's already dying. It's time to take the needle out." What am I compared to them? Kate, what's going to happen to her? I mean, she's literally not on her feet yet. 800 hours. 9. 10 o'clock call. Come on in. I'm still in surgery. He's done with the surgery. I know the feeling. No, one wine won't make you as drunk as this fatigue. We're sitting here, 2 ogled men. He's fatigued, I don't seem to be driving, says Martin after the examination. And with these words, I can survive the weekend. But on the day when I have to go to oncology to find out the results of the function, I'm being absolutely disgraceful. I lie on the couch, stuffed with sedatives, surrey, brandy. I lie there, numb, and occasionally start sobbing. Function finds no cancerous cells in the tumor tube they have to operate. But the prognosis is good. After stressing a few days later, I start to have pain all over everything: my back, legs, joints, fingers, and toes. And even eyelids pills don't relieve this pain. I can't even sleep with my foot on the pillow. Oncology inpatient. Doctor, there are two such experienced doctors here. They walk down the corridor swiftly, keeping their heads down, seemingly not noticing anyone. It's only seeming. They may not remember their names, but the case is perfect. Here you are, 3 people with your fingers in the women's dressings. What's your last name? Come with me. I want to watch you affectionately, not only with the seriously ill. Strange, says the doctor, having examined me. I don't. 30 years old watching a woman bruise. 2 centimeter swelling. Would have noticed, do you think? Go to our cleaner, get a third opinion. Otherwise, I shouldn't have authorized you. But the ultimate decision is mine. The ultrasound cleans, finds the tumor immediately, and outlines the breast with a black marker. Before marriage, sensuality is in question. I am taken into surgery. I learn later that I am lucky, that people like me, after 3-4 months of waiting in line, being put in inpatient units, go up to the nurse's office every day and wait hopelessly for another hour. Finally, the nurse comes out. The doctors don't have time for you today. Dismissed. They get up, wander through the wards. Monday, Tuesday, everyone's home with husbands. Children Wednesday. You're lucky. The doctors have half an hour today. 2 of them quickly changed their clothes, took off their rings and earrings to the elevator and me. And you next time lucky literally evaporate, to in a minute already in full readiness to emerge elevator. We are sitting in the anteroom of the operating room. 3 women in line, wrapped in white sheets, right sledding in a Roman bath. There are no Euro renovations here. This is where the tiles fall off. This is where the most difficult minutes are for doctors. On the operating table, you're literally disintegrating. Arms out to the sides and strapped down for anesthesia. I really don't care what it takes, as long as I get a diagnosis. It's nice to have a screen so I can't see. Thank God, the nurse hangs the tape on a special holder in front of my face. The minutes drag on endlessly. The lights go out. And who's gone? Just the nurse. Stand to my side. Don't rush for another hour. We're waiting for the tumor results. Good quality. They're letting me go home. By 8 o'clock, I go to oncology for dressings. There are 20 of us in line. And I, who still has a moral, so amazed and delighted. Shoulder hurts, complains a woman without one breast. This week, 200 cans of tomatoes twisted. Have you already bought underwear? Another woman asks. And what about for 1,100? This is the third. And where did you get it? The fourth greedily asks. Show me. The woman looks around the corridor is a doctor, a very young guy. I wasn't there. She pulls up her shirt. Here's a beautiful bra with lace all over it. I've got this, and I've got a hallway full of it. Naked. The doctor just shakes his head. But you're good. The doctor can't even see me anymore. I'm a thing of the past to him. I'm not offended at all. He's got 10 complicated cases, 10 rooms, beds in the hallway. Thank him for everything. But why doesn't anyone believe me? Martin asks. I said good quality. I'm not saying that I believe him so much that going to the operation, I touched the wall of his house, as I would lie down in the temple to the icon, asking for help from above. I have known for a long time that God is with him. That's what happened to Kate's mom. And thank goodness everything turned out all right. By Christmas, Betty was back in school. David's help was invaluable. He helped the young mother get a part-time job at the university in one of the departments. There was not much time left until graduation, and Betty's mother said she would take care of the baby herself. Her daughter sent her the money she had earned, and everything settled down. Jacob sobbed with complete freedom. She knew that if she began to decide through the courts, it would be difficult to enter the muddy water. She decided to avoid it. Much later, she found out that the professor had contacted her mom and was sending her money every month too. And as a practical woman, she decided to accept that help. But she didn't say anything broader. It's not easy as it is. And when my daughter graduates from university and gets a job, I'll just save the money the father sends for Clara, the mother thought. David had a crush on her. I think he even dreamed about her. He often thought of her. How sometimes you fall in love in spite of your own plans, calculations, attitudes. But he realized that after everything that was going on, Kate would not give him a chance and sent money for his daughter. Thought that if Kate ever found out about it, he would not look like such a scoundrel in her eyes. The hobby friends graduated at the same time. At Kate's house, they had a feast. As the girl said, only for her own people. Betty in the kitchen tried her best to set the table beautifully. David, Maria, if it wasn't for you, thank you. She stood with a glass of champagne in her hand and tears in her eyes. Oh, don't worry about us. Here's a favor for you. Anything always on Kate's mind. I mean, she's a bright head. And now to go to grad school. Then I'll take her to Germany for surgery. That was the plan. So what? So she wants to go back to where she was born. Liam's back, working where he did hers. It felt like Maria was in deep distress. I'm not saying I'm leaving for good, Kate said quietly, but we must see Kostya and decide together what to do next. We only waved our hands in the heat of the moment. Her old life seemed to her, if not hell, then purgatory, from which she had escaped with great difficulty. And the fact that Kate had decided to return to those parts filled her soul with fear, while Kate was joyful, just waiting for what she had dreamed of all her life. She insisted, and a few days later her relatives put her on a train of places in street. Well then, she tried to cheer up her parents. Maybe I'll come with you for the 1000th time, Mom. No, I'll come. You'll see, and you'll send me to Germany. I will. Mother nodded, trying to smile, but wiping away her own tears. Liam met Kate at the station. They stood embraced for so long that they didn't notice the passengers leaving. And then they talked, interrupting each other and yet understanding each other half-heartedly. And our house is boarded up. I'll keep an eye on it. Don't think about it. If you want, even today you can go in there, and your mom is waiting for the room. She has prepared pies for you on the table. What with the raspberry jam, you'll be picking raspberries soon. She will. Liam laughed. Everything was already agreed between them. So, they would apply this week too. Neither of them wanted to wait any longer. And Kate, having lived in the city most of her life, realized that her place was here and at the university. That's why she chose biology. A job would be found at least as a teacher at school, teaching the kids to love the local nature she loved so much. At home at Liam's, the girl was so cheerful and talkative, as they had not seen her for a long time. The lush pies were good, and so was the flavor. Tea was brewed with herbs. They sat at the table until nightfall, and then Kate slept as soundly as she had in recent years. The air here is a special froth more often, she said. It was a few days after her arrival. The whole family was sitting down to dinner. Kate carried a teacup card and suddenly dropped it. The hot tea spilled over the table into her lap. Liam's mother shrieked. Liam became alarmed. Kate looked up into Kate's face. What's wrong? Are you feeling okay in there? Said Kate, pointing to the window and not taking her eyes off him. Did you see that? What's wrong? The man's face pressed against the glass, so scary, unfamiliar. My God! Liam's mother believed her at once, and the young man ran outside to see who had frightened Kate. It was already dark, and he didn't see anyone. Kate was amicably reassured. Liam's mother suggested that it might have been the alky neighbor who lived near them. Probably came to borrow money. Yeah, he saw a stranger and was shy. Kate nodded and pretended to calm down, but she couldn't sleep for a long time. She dreamed of that pale face in which she recognized familiar features. No, it couldn't be, of course. Probably her subconsciousness called up in her memory the past appearance of her father. So she had imagined it. Then came the bright sunny days when Liam returned from work. He always took Kate for a walk. It was as if it was easier for her to walk here. They reached the far cellar where it was already beginning to mature. They visited a forest stream. Since the hunting huts did not want, Kate did not want. It has long been in negative condition, standing without windows and doors. There's nothing to see there, Liam agreed. You know how there's nothing to see. Is the house an abandoned barn, or will we be taken apart for firewood? And the hut was quickly taken over. But it's not convenient to carry it far from here. So the walls are intact. If I see this place, I'm afraid I'll hallucinate. Kate shook her head. I'm much more aware of the past now. I can remember scenes I've long forgotten. How did my mom get me out of there? I can't imagine. Liam hugged the girl. He was much taller. Kate felt his strong arm pressed against his chest. She became calm. She really wanted Liam to tell her that the past was in the past, that she would never meet her father again, that he would protect her from all harm. But Kate didn't ask to be reassured. For too long, she had indoctrinated herself to be strong. You can't spring on the necks of others. Right now, she was trying to keep her cool. She had plenty of free time during the day. And if before she was studying, preparing for exams, now the work was alone waiting for Kostya, and she decided to pass the time by going out, walking without him. She wanted to put what she had learned into practice and see firsthand the plants and animals she had studied at university. Kate now knew the Latin names for the life cycle of Polis and Hebrew. She felt more at home in the taiga than ever before. Liam was wary of the idea, but Kate's voice was firm. You know my strength. I won't go away for more than 2 or 3 hours. I need it to make me feel like a full person, not an invalid who needs a companion. In the end, Liam relented, only asking her to be sure to bring her hunting rifles with her. You haven't forgotten how to shoot. In general, in summer I don't know what should happen to be attacked by a predator in the vicinity of the village. And we haven't seen bears around here for a long time. But as they say, it's better to be careful. He picked up one of his rifles, an old, lightweight one. Kate always took it with her. That time she decided to pick raspberries and hung the gun on one of the branches. Beaten by a racer, she went deeper into the thicket. Time flew by imperceptibly. The bidon was almost full. When someone grabbed Kate's arm, the grip was firm, hard not to rip out the chassis. The girl looked up and literally in the freezing cold was walking to the spot. The same face she thought she had resolved into a nightmare. An overgrown bearded man. Father. Kate said him, and there was no doubt left. She couldn't even get a word out in response. I followed you. It was what Mom was most afraid of. And she herself had troll-fit Kate from somewhere. She didn't recognize her own voice. It got so thin and shaky that your mom thought she killed me. But I recovered, and now I'm far away living there. Skit Cage is abandoned. No one will ever find it. How do you know what I am? So I get out to see people from time to time. You can't do without it. So you and me, we're gonna make it. When I came to get salt and matches, they told me you'd arrived. Your mom didn't want to live with me. God be with her. That's what she left me helpless. I won't forgive that. You can't do that in the taiga. I won't forgive you for separating us. No matter what you say, my blood is still yours. And for that I should be grateful. Kate pointed to her mangled leg. If it hadn't been for Mom, I would have died out there in the woods. What would you have said then? You bring up natural selection again. If Mom had gone crazy, that would have been okay too. A matter of everyday life that she herself did not notice how in place of fear comes from the ashes rage. The nation, it seems, is not in. Her anger, once you've lived a little longer, you'll realize there's no place for a soft heart. Life is a cruel thing. You said it yourself. Remember, I don't belong here, and I don't want anything to do with you. Nonsense, Katya. Come with me. See how well we'll live together. We won't need anyone. Her father dragged her by the hand. Kate was definitely transported from a childhood, which she had to obey her father's every whim, when his will seemed inseparable. If she fell now, he wouldn't drag her to his abandoned hermitage. The fear she felt was more paralyzing than he could beat her with. He could let her go now for tomorrow, again devise some trap. He is clever and cunning and powerful. He might choose Kostya as his victim, so that she would have no reason to stay here, so that she would follow him out of desperation. But she had a chance, one single chance. The bidon, she said. I'll take it with me. I dropped it there in the cell phone. Her father even smiled. I think that's what Kate saw through his thick beard. Wait here, I'll get it. I said, don't be afraid. I can't physically run away, Kate said. He disappeared into the bushes and returned a couple minutes later with the bidon that Kate had dropped and locked up. The daughter stood changing her foot in the stump and leading the guns at him. Crazy, she whispered for all to see. You've been dead a long time. The moment Kate pulled the trigger, her own heart stopped for a few moments. They were meeting her at the airport. The plane from Germany was about to land. David, Kate, Mom, and Betty with her daughter in her arms. You say hello, Godfather, break the horse. Baby in front of Clara, just as long as the flight wasn't delayed. Maria was worried. That's how she got turned on. First the surgery, then these complications. I'd rather have a limp all my life than go through this. But Liam was with her nonstop. And I think that was a great support for her. And about the surgery, it was a Scooter decision, convincing his wife. What did you decide? Maria turned to Betty. Well, what would you have heard Jacob repenting? Said it took him a while to realize it. He was orphaned without me. Without us, that's us. So what? Betty shook the baby on his arm to make the girl more comfortable. We're going back like this. At this time, it was announced that the plane they were waiting for was coming in for a landing. Yet they couldn't wait to see Kate. Liam was walking behind her with heavy bags, and Kate was looking around in the crowd for her family. And when she saw her family, she waved her hand and walked as lightly as if it hadn't even happened. Past the massive stick of a heavy step, little Clara waved back at her and shouted hello.